I married the son of my father's sworn enemy. On our wedding night, he clenched his teeth so hard they made a cracking sound, while I grinned from ear to ear. For as long as I can remember, my life's motto has been, do everything possible to go against Yen Jingyu. Since Yen Jingyu despised me, I insisted on marrying him. Strict family rules govern the Yen household. We cannot tolerate indulgence or extravagance. Since your highness is determined to marry in, this humble official can only comply. I hope your highness will conduct yourself with restraint and honor our family tradition. Yen Jingyu sat across from me, wearing his usual deadpan face, stiff and conservative as ever. He'd been like that since I first met him at the age of 3. Back then, my imperial grandmother gifted me a little rabbit, which I lost during a garden outing with my father. I cried so hard that my father ordered the entire palace to be turned upside down to find it. Yen Jingyu, who was just 10 years old at the time, stood there with a cold face and furrowed brows, saying, to disrupt the entire palace over a single person, this is not the conduct befitting a princess. My father was a mighty emperor who had sired 7 sons before finally, at the age of 40, having me. He cried his eyes out holding me at the door of the birthing chamber. Thus, I became the only princess of this dynasty, above all else. My father is willing to spoil me. Who are you to judge? I kicked him, leaving a black footprint on his robe. Yen Jingyu's face darkened, yet he stood there, expression stiff, and said through gritted teeth, not everyone will indulge you. From then on, a grudge formed between Yen Jingyu and me. The year I came of age, rumors began to spread that no one wanted to marry me. Whenever the court proposed an engagement for the princess, half the officials suddenly fell ill, leaving my father facing a half-empty hall for over half a month. During that time, only Yen Jingyu remained steadfast, attending court rain or shine. One day, after another squabble with Yen Jingyu, a wicked idea struck me in anger. Yen Jingyu, how about I marry you? I declared. Yen Jingyu listened without flinching, then replied with a cold face, Your Highness, you are welcome to try. He dared to look down on me, he would pay for it. I went straight to my father and said I wanted to marry Yen Jingyu. In the imperial study, my father laughed like a giddy goose, pacing excitedly. Ha ha ha. Excellent. Truly excellent. That old bastard from the Yen family scolds me to my face every day. Let him taste some chaos at home too. The old bastard he spoke of was Yen Jingyu's father, a sharp-tongued elder with a full white beard, famous for his fierce rebukes against imperial decrees on the court floor. Whenever their political views clashed, he and my father would fight like cats and dogs. Chaos at home too? I stared at my father with a stiff face. My father's laughter caught in his throat, making a high-pitched chirp. No, of course not. My precious daughter is too noble. That lowly Yen Jingyu is barely worthy. We'll just have his father retire. Let Yen Jingyu inherit his post. The excitement practically radiated from my father's face. With Yen Jingyu's father out of the picture, the court's vocal opposition would lose its leader, and my father could enjoy some much-needed peace. Jean, my father said tearfully, please don't let Yen Jingyu ever speak against me. Just let him be a silent, dutiful official. A silent censor? Does that even count as a real official? Now, sitting here, I had one foot propped up on another little carved stool, smugly watching Yen Jingyu's expression. Lord Yen, I said, you must be wondering now what it feels like to reap what you sow. He told me to try, so here I was trying. I searched his face for any sign of anger or frustration. But, to my dismay, those cold, abyss-like eyes I knew so well remained calm as ever. Even now, dressed in a bright red wedding robe with a jade crown atop his head, Yen Jingyu carried the same impenetrable composure he always had. At some point, he'd grown so tall that even sitting I had to look up at him. Yen Jingyu, why aren't you begging for mercy? I asked in frustration, tossing my chopsticks aside and leaning closer to him. I told you, kneel down and kowtow 3 times at my door, and I might spare you. A man's knees are as precious as gold, Yen Jingyu replied coolly. If your highness dares to treat marriage like a joke, this humble official will accompany you to the end. You, I pointed at him, my finger nearly poking his eye. Yenjingyu, this is the princess's residence. You eat my food, live under my roof, and still dare show disrespect. If your highness dislikes it here, Yenjingyu said without changing expression, then come live with me at the Yen estate. Our food will sustain you just as well. I'd expected him to rage, to curse, to lose control, but never this infuriating indifference. It felt like punching cotton. My anger roared, burning up my chest. With a loud crash, I smashed the cup in my hand. Yenjingyu, are you trying to rebel? I am loyal to my duties. How could this be rebellion? Right in front of him, I ripped off my phoenix crown and flung my wedding robe to the ground. Yenjingyu, I'll take a concubine, a male concubine. This marriage is over. I'd never been so disheveled in front of a man before, but he had driven me past all reason. I turned to storm out. A hot, firm hand suddenly seized my wrist and yanked me back. I struggled, but Yenjingyu held me fast, as easily as gripping a frail stalk of grass. The depths of his dark eyes locked onto me as he stood up, step by step approaching. In the Yen family, our descendants are forbidden to take concubines, he said. I'm not part of the Yen family. I snapped. Yenjingyu's lips curled into the slightest, most infuriating smile. By imperial decree, we have bowed, paid respects, and are now husband and wife. You jumped into this pit yourself. Shall I teach your highness what it means to reap what you sow? How dare he use my own words against me? He had always been so serious, yet now there was a rare trace of mockery in his calm gaze, making my heart pound uncontrollably. I forced it down. Who needs you to teach me? Let go. I'm going to bed. Standing with his back to the window, he shielded me from the night breeze. I wasn't even cold, but his scorching palm against my wrist made goosebumps rise all over my skin. Your Highness, he said solemnly, one should finish what they start. He lifted the ceremonial wine cup and offered it to me, as formal and meticulous as ever. I snatched it away in irritation and drained it in one gulp. Yenjingyu didn't mind. After drinking his share, he bowed and said, Your Highness, please rest. This humble official will take his leave. At least you know your place, I said smugly, heading toward the bed. I had barely taken a step when a strange tingling sensation flared up at the top of my thigh, shooting straight into my chest, like tiny feathers teasing my heart, making it ticklish and restless. Yenjingyu's steps suddenly halted, and he turned back to look at me. I looked back at him, too. A wave of heat rushed to my cheeks, and my heart thudded uncontrollably. In the mirror, I caught a glimpse of myself, my face flushed crimson like blood, my eyes shimmering with an unmistakable hint of spring. All of a sudden, I didn't want him to leave. Acting purely on instinct, used to giving orders, I blurted out, Hey, you, come here. A flicker of flame leapt in Yenjingyu's eyes, like the golden red glow of a fire just beginning to catch. He asked, Is your highness sure? In a panic, I stomped my foot. I didn't quite understand what was happening, but I desperately wanted him to come over, to pull him to me, and then what? I didn't know. Yenjingyu answered for me. He wrapped an arm around my waist, scooped me up in a bridal carry, and tossed me onto the bed, roughly, without any gentleness. His arms were steady and powerful, scorching hot like iron, pinning me down on the bed so that I couldn't move. I cried out in pain, tears welling up in my eyes. A red mark instantly bloomed on my pale wrist. I had grown up pampered beyond measure, cherished like a jewel. My skin was delicate as silk, unable to withstand even the slightest mistreatment. Furious, I snapped, Yenjingyu, are you insane? But the moment the words left my mouth, they were as soft as a mosquito's buzz, completely lacking in authority. Every sensation was amplified 100-fold: pain, itchiness, numbness, and heat. Even the slightest brush of Yenjingyu's rough fingertips across my smooth back sent shivers down my spine. Even if I was a fool, I understood what was happening now. Gritting my teeth weakly, I squeezed out a trembling accusation. "You wicked minister! How dare you drug me?" Yen Jingyu kissed me and scattered, burning pecs, his hand as hot as a furnace. He paused for a moment, his dark eyes locked onto mine like molten fire. "Is your highness sure you want me to leave?" he asked. Was I sure? Instinctively, I clutched his wrist, panic flooding my heart. If he left, what would I do? "And no, you," I stammered for a long time, unable to get a coherent word out. Yen Jingyu seemed to understand. He bit lightly on my earlobe, his scorching breath brushing against my ear as he murmured, "Since your highness insists on keeping me here, I will take responsibility." And with that, he no longer gave me any chance to speak. After marrying Yen Jingyu, my father granted him 3 days of leave. But on the very first day, he didn't even let me get out of bed intact. I cried endlessly, my voice hoarse, my body covered in marks that made my cheeks burn with shame, nearly drowning in humiliation. Never in my life had anyone dared to treat me like this. Yet Yen Jingyu, touching my aching backside, my face burned so hot it felt like it might catch fire. I desperately wanted to erase every memory of what had happened the night before. By the time the sun was high, Yen Jingyu was nowhere to be seen. That scoundrel, had he abandoned me after getting his fill? Or was he overcome with guilt and couldn't bear to face me? My rustling movements stirred the maidservants outside. "Your Highness, are you awake? May I come in?" The bed was a complete mess, and there were even traces of blood on the sheets. In a panic, I quickly interrupted, "Where's the prince consort? Where is Yen Jingyu?" One of the maids answered timidly from outside, replying to "Your Highness, the prince consort has sent someone to check multiple times. He said he'll come over as soon as Your Highness wakes."
"Yeah."
I stuttered. "What?" "I've already sent someone to fetch the prince consort," the maid added. "And no." I cried out hastily, forgetting everything else. I tried to get out of bed in a panic, but the moment I moved, a sharp, sore pain shot through my legs, and I collapsed back down with a yelp, tears springing to my eyes. No, I couldn't face him like this. Hunched over, I scrambled back onto the bed, frantically searching for any clothes I could still wear. I had to leave the residence today. I had to go to the palace. I had to hide from him. Heaven knew, one moment of recklessness, and marrying him had become a life-or-death disaster. Just then, the door swung open. I instinctively shouted, "Who allowed you to come in?" "Me." That single, unhurried word froze me in place. I turned my head slowly. Yen Jingyu stood there, dressed in dark robes, his expression calm, stepping steadily into the room. He closed the door behind him with practiced ease. The composed, dignified figure before me was a stark contrast to the wild, unrestrained man from last night. I let out a whimper and burrowed desperately under the quilt, wrapping myself up layer after layer, wriggling deeper into the bed. "Get out," I croaked. I was terrified he would lose control again and pin me down to bully me once more. Yen Jingyu ignored me completely. He walked to the bed, bent down, and reached out his hand. I slapped his hand away. What do you want?" "I won't let you push me around again. I will take responsibility," he said calmly. I pulled down a corner of the quilt, exposing my collarbone. It was covered in a patchwork of faint red marks. Face flaming, I shouted, "This is how you take responsibility." I accidentally brushed against a sore spot, hissing in pain. "You're like a dog. You even used your teeth." A shadow flashed across Yen Jingyu's eyes, but it disappeared so quickly I couldn't catch what he was thinking. In the next instant, he was as unreadable and deep as ever. "Your Highness," he said evenly. "The wine was bestowed by His Majesty." I froze. My father? Thinking back to my father's tearful yet nearly hysterical grin at my wedding, I realized it was entirely possible he had pulled something like this. Still, I couldn't admit defeat out loud. "Who knows if you didn't tamper with the imperial wine yourself? You're wicked beyond words." Without responding, Yen Jingyu lifted his robe and sat on the edge of the bed. Ignoring my protests, he reached under the covers, grabbed me, and dragged me out. I screamed, struggled, and flailed wildly. Help! Somebody help! Yan Jingyu is eating people alive. I thrashed so hard that my arm hit the edge of the bed, quickly swelling red. Jean, hold still. Yan Jingyu barked sharply. I flinched. Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision as they spilled down in streams. It was the first time Yan Jingyu had ever called me by my given name. He had always maintained an impersonal distance, addressing me as Your Highness in public and private alike. But now, angered, Jean slipped from his lips, startlingly intimate. The corner of a little red undergarment peeked out from under the quilt and brushed against Yan Jingyu's thigh, carrying a faint, sweet fragrance. My mind went blank, heat surging to my head. I felt utterly mortified. Flashes of last night came rushing back, him tearing off my clothes without mercy, that little red undergarment crumpled tightly in his hand. With a whimper, I fumbled blindly under the quilt, trying to snatch back that scrap of fabric. Just as I was about to succeed in snatching it back, Yan Jingyu lowered his eyes and, with a calm, almost casual motion, pinched the garment and pulled it out from under the quilt without even looking. He tossed it to the floor and asked, "Where does it hurt?" I suspected he was doing this on purpose. The little garment slipping from my grasp, I clutched the quilt tightly and snapped, "Nowhere. I'm going to the palace." "What for?" "To file a complaint, of course." "File a complaint against whom?" Yan Jingyu asked, pretending not to know, which made me so furious that tears started pouring out. "Against you. You bullied me." Hearing this, the corners of his mouth lifted ever so slightly in a barely noticeable smirk. "And how does Your Highness intend to explain to others exactly how I bullied you?" "Of course it's like this, and then like that." My voice grew weaker and weaker. Yes, how was I supposed to explain? I'd be a laughingstock the moment I opened my mouth. He clearly knew I had no way to truly accuse him. Taking advantage of my distraction, he grabbed my ankle and, with a gentle tug, dragged me, quilt and all, onto his lap. Somehow, he produced a jar of clear, cool ointment, scooped out a bit, and began smoothing it carefully over my collarbone with his fingertips. "Last night you kept crying about the pain. Was it here?" he asked, his hand sliding down to my waist. The bruises along my skin were shockingly vivid, making me look as if I'd been brutally mistreated. I gasped sharply, feeling a strange new emotion flare up under his fingertips. My pride crumbled. I buried my face against his collarbone, mumbling weakly, "See, could you be a little gentler? You're a civil official. Why are you so rough?" A low chuckle rumbled above my head, and I froze. The great treacherous minister actually laughed. It was truly a once-in-a-lifetime event. That laugh, as faint and weightless as a strand of hair, seemed to swirl into my heart, stirring up strange feelings I dared not confront. When his hand continued moving lower, I shrieked, "Yan Jingyu, I forbid you to." "To do what, Your Highness?" he asked, voice low. "To touch." "To touch where?" I burst into tears, sobbing. "It hurts there. You're not allowed. Don't touch." "But just now, Your Highness said it didn't hurt." "Now it hurts. Now." Yan Jingyu cupped my burning face with one large, heated hand and gently wiped away my tears. "If it hurts, then all the more reason to apply medicine." And so, on the second day of our marriage, Yan Jingyu made me cry again. I finally understood. These civil officials were all stubborn to their bones. Once they set their mind on something, nothing could sway them. No wonder my father had been so desperate to marry me off. This was his way of shifting the disaster elsewhere. Yan Jingyu, too busy dealing with me, had no time to deal with my father. Father had granted Yan Jingyu 3 days of leave after the wedding, planning to take advantage of the lull to knock some sense into the court censors. But to everyone's surprise, on just the second day, Yan Jingyu showed up at court, impeccably dressed, sitting at the censorate's seat with his eternal iceberg face, ruthlessly shredding my father's new policies to pieces. With him leading the charge, the censors, emboldened, swarmed together, leaving my father completely routed, suffering a crushing defeat. The efficiency of the Yen family could truly be seen in action. Later, my father sent people to probe around, asking discreetly whether I'd drunk the ceremonial wine. I responded by chasing them, horses and all, straight out of the princess's residence. Men. Not a single one could be trusted. On the second day after marrying in, I was supposed to formally pay respects to Yan Jingyu's father, the elder Grand Censor. But thanks to Yan Jingyu leaving me sore all over and unable to walk properly, that plan was scrapped. Afterward, he never mentioned it again. Each night, when he returned, he started disciplining me, so much so that I was constantly exhausted, forgetting anything important I wanted to say. That night, when I mentioned I wanted to pay respects to his father, Yan Jingyu had just finished washing up, his robes half undone. He paused mid-motion, looked at me with calm, dark eyes, and asked, "Which father?" Sitting on the edge of the bed in my thin underclothes, hugging my knees, I replied, "Of course your father. My father is called Father Emperor." He hesitated briefly, then continued to undress. "You really want to?" he asked. "Why wouldn't I?" I said in confusion. "Yan Jingyu, it would be strange not to visit your elders after marrying into their family." Stripping off his outer robe, he walked toward me, towering over me. He pulled out my hairpin with a swift motion, letting my hair cascade down. Then he knelt on the bed with one knee, pressing a hand down to trap me against the mattress. Fingers threading through my hair, he leaned in to kiss me. I tilted my head back, propped a hand against his chest, and exclaimed right into his close-up, stoic face, "Lord Yen, stop. Stop." There was already a glint of desire in his dark eyes. He bent lower, his voice husky. "What's wrong?" Trying my best to sound sweet and pleading, I whispered, "You said yesterday you'd let me rest for a night." At times like this, toughness was useless. Only coaxing worked. Previously, when he'd been too rough, I'd cried and begged for a few days' break, and surprisingly, he had honored his word, only lying quietly beside me at night without doing anything. Yan Jingyu stared at me for a long moment. A subtle glimmer of satisfaction flashed through his eyes. "Forgive me," he said, "for breaking my promise." A man who normally prided himself on never breaking his word, this time he broke it, and even more ruthlessly than before. There, on the bed, he earnestly asked for my forgiveness, while doing the exact opposite of anything forgivable. Thus, I held nothing but contempt for him. Yet thinking back to his possessiveness and aggression, my face burned again, and I didn't know where to look. After all, I had been spoiled and willful for so many years, all thanks to the endless love from my father and my elder brothers. Even though Yan Jingyu had clashed with me year after year, it had never truly hurt me. I simply did as I pleased. Now, with my lifelong nemesis suddenly becoming the one who governed me, someone even closer than my father, grandmother, or brothers, it was like a tiger having its fangs pulled out. I wasn't even as fierce as a kitten anymore. The next day, the weather was clear and bright. Yan Jingyu took me to visit the Yen family. It was my first time meeting the Grand Censor, Yen, in private. As soon as we stepped inside, I nervously clutched the sleeve of Yan Jingyu's robe. Knowing the kind of man he was, strict and bound by etiquette, I hadn't held out any hope that he would offer me any words of comfort. But unexpectedly, Yan Jingyu, walking ahead of me, suddenly came to a halt. He turned around and glanced at the corner of his robe being tightly gripped by me. "Let go," he said. "No." I refused flatly. I held on stubbornly, feeling a surge of grievance. After all, this was someone who had embraced and kissed me before. Now I couldn't even hold on to his sleeve without him making a fuss. Yan Jingyu sighed lightly. "Pulling and tugging is improper." After saying that, he extended his hand from under his sleeve, palm open and facing me. His hand was broad and well-defined, a hand that had often made my heart race during moments of tenderness. But now it was simply held out in front of me. My mind blinked. Dumbly, I let go of his sleeve. Yan Jingyu then took my newly freed hand into his own, his calloused fingers rubbing gently against the back of mine, sending a warm current through me. "Your Highness, The Yen residence is not a dragon's lair, he said, pulling me along as we walked forward. I lowered my head and followed him closely, afraid he would see how red my face had become. I know, I muttered under my breath. Like you need to tell me. At the entrance of the main hall, I saw Grand Censor Yen immediately, white beard flowing, standing tall and straight. My palms grew sweaty. I wanted nothing more than to hide behind Yen Jingyu. In my mind, I worried. What if Grand Censor Yen scolded me the way he scolded my father? And if he scolded me harshly, would Yen Jingyu protect me? Before I could figure it out, Grand Censor Yen dropped to his knees before me. This humble official, Yen Rusong, greets your highness. Despite his age, Grand Censor Yen knelt with a straight back and a powerful voice. His sudden kneeling made cold sweat break out all over me. I hurriedly reached out to help him up. Father, please don't. I'm already married to Yen Jingyu. From now on, I'm part of the Yen family. I should be the one kneeling to you. As I said this, I caught the intense gaze Yen Jingyu was giving me from the side. Flustered, I quickly turned away, my heart pounding wildly. The rights between ruler and subject must not be abandoned, Grand Censor Yen said solemnly. Your Highness, please accept this old official's bow. He was too strong for me to lift. Helpless, I glanced at Yen Jingyu for help. I could throw tantrums at Yen Jingyu, but before elders, I had to show proper respect. If I had to kneel today, I would suffer greatly. At the critical moment, it was Yen Jingyu who stepped in. He supported Grand Censor Yen and said, Father, Her Highness is unwell and cannot stand for long. Upon hearing this, Grand Censor Yen coughed lightly, shot a glare at Yen Jingyu, and sternly said, Then Your Highness, please be seated. Inside, the dining hall was already set with a full table of dishes. The three of us sat down with Yen Jingyu and I on one side and Grand Censor Yen on the other. After the formal tea offering, the room fell into dead silence. No one picked up their chopsticks. I glanced at Yen Jingyu. He said, Your Highness, please. Feeling extremely awkward, I finally picked up my chopsticks and reached for my favorite, a drumstick. After a moment's hesitation, I stretched forward and placed it into Grand Censor Yen's bowl. Father, please eat first. Then, with another pang of hesitation, I picked up the second drumstick and painfully dropped it into Yen Jingyu's bowl. Yen Jingyu looked slightly surprised but quickly masked it. He nodded politely and said, Thank you, Your Highness. There were only 2 drumsticks. I thought he'd at least make a token gesture and give it back to me, but no, he actually said thank you. I watched helplessly as Yen Jingyu calmly gripped the drumstick with his chopsticks, lowered his head gracefully, and took a dignified bite, an image of pure refinement. My chest tightened with frustration. Is it good? I asked. Yen Jingyu didn't answer. It reminded me of one of his constant teachings. Do not speak while eating. Do not speak while sleeping. Yet, he didn't always live by his own rules, especially at night, when his words were anything but restrained. He chewed slowly, completely ignoring my eager stare. Well then, surely it wasn't too much if I took a tiny bite? Sneaking a glance at Grand Censor Yen, I saw he was still focused on his bowl of white jade radish soup. As Yen Jingyu lifted the drumstick for another bite, I quickly leaned in. The sudden movement shortened the distance between us. I ended up propping both hands against his thigh, using him to support my weight. His rough thumb brushed lightly against my cheek. Yen Jingyu froze. He probably had never experienced such an improper scene inside the Yen residence, much less in front of his own father. Our eyes met. Taking advantage of the moment, I bit into the drumstick in his hand, just a tiny nibble, then quickly pulled back. The once neat drumstick now had a big bite from him and a tiny nibble for me right next to it. Feeling smug and victorious, I chewed contentedly and blinked mischievously at him. Yen Jingyu gave me a flat look and silently put down his chopsticks. Still chewing, I glared at him in annoyance. Was it really worth making such a fuss over one little bite? Yen Jingyu called out, Wash hands. A servant immediately brought over a basin of water. My irritation flared. He brushed against my face and now wanted to wash hands. He had touched me countless times before, and I didn't see him being so particular then. Still sulking, I watched Yen Jingyu calmly finish washing his hands. Then he bent his head and picked up the drumstick from his bowl. With deft, elegant movements, he tore it apart into thin, delicate strips, carefully avoiding the places where we had bitten. He piled the snowy white meat into a small mountain in my bowl. I was stunned. Before my temper could even rise, it was replaced by a strange, sweet little warmth spiraling up in my chest. As for the drumstick parts we had bitten, Yen Jingyu ate them himself, slow and composed. Mindful of Grand Censor Yan's presence, I shyly changed the way I addressed him, whispering, "Husband, that part, I already bit it." Yen Jingyu responded coolly, "No talking while eating." All right, I know," I muttered. Munching on the shredded chicken he had meticulously prepared for me, I couldn't help it. The corners of my mouth curled up in a quiet, helpless smile. Throughout the entire meal, Grand Censor Yen acted as if he were blind, focusing solely on his bowl of radish soup, drinking one bowl after another. The meal ended under an extremely quiet and awkward atmosphere. As we were about to leave, Grand Censor Yen said only one thing to Yen Jingyu: "Exercise self-restraint." Yen Jingyu bowed respectfully. "I shall strictly follow father's teachings." Hearing this, my eyes grew hot with unshed tears. Grand Censor Yen had clearly seen through everything Yen Jingyu had done and used those words to warn him. Sometimes, when I was furious, I would call Yen Jingyu a treacherous minister or a petty man, and he would calmly reply, "This humble official never claimed to be a man of impeccable virtue." Self-restraint, he really did need it. The Yen residence was very close to the princess's residence. On the way back, I walked behind him. "Hey," I called out, "do you think your father dislikes me?" Back at the Yen household, I had been so nervous, terrified of making a mistake and offending Grand Censor Yen. Yen Jingyu walked leisurely ahead without turning around. "Is your highness very concerned?" "Of course. He's your father," I said. "But when you insisted on marrying into the Yen family, your highness didn't seem to ask for his opinion," he replied. Back then, this marriage had been orchestrated entirely by me and my father. The Yen family had practically been forced to accept it. From their perspective, they had been handed a princess daughter-in-law and even at meals had to maintain formalities. It really wasn't fair to them. Although Yen Jingyu was merely stating facts, I felt aggrieved. If he hadn't provoked me in the first place, would I have ended up marrying him by accident? Out of habit, I retorted, "Are you blaming me?" Yen Jingyu said, "What I mean is, your highness is a princess. You need not care about others' opinions." The warmth I had just started to feel began to slowly dissipate. What did he mean, need not care? Years ago, when I led a group to beat up a few spoiled noble sons in the capital, my reputation plummeted. Rumors spread that I was arrogant, selfish, and ruthless. In Yen Jingyu's eyes, I must have seemed the same because I was selfish. I didn't need to care about anyone else. I felt like he was mocking me. Yen Jingyu turned around. Under the cold, clear moonlight, he still maintained that same unshakable calm. "Your highness has seen it for yourself," he said. "The Yen family's household is strict and rigid. You felt uncomfortable there. I suppose you won't wish to endure such restraint in the future."
"What do you mean by that?"
I asked coldly. "Are you saying I shouldn't have come to the Yen family at all?" Yen Jingyu opened his mouth, then seemed to give up and simply said, "Yes." What kind of daughter-in-law wasn't even welcome in her own husband's home? My voice rose sharply, echoing through the empty streets, grating and shrill. "Yen Jingyu, do you think my marriage to you was just child's play?" Yen Jingyu fell silent, only looking at me, his gaze as if seeing right through me. "Wasn't it?" he finally said.
"Wasn't it?"
The words exploded in my mind. So this was what he had thought all along. If he truly believed that me marrying him was just a game, just a farce, then all those nights he held me close, calling me Jean, what were they to him?
Routine?
An act? "Yen Jingyu, what right do you have to say that?" I demanded. Yan Jingyu said calmly. Before we consummated the marriage, Your Highness said something. Do you still remember? How could I remember? I snapped, face cold. You said, if the marriage turned sour, it could be annulled. If annulled, it could be divorced. Worst case, you could dismiss me outright. If I ever treated you poorly, you could simply leave. He had such an infuriating memory. I had just said that casually at the time, yet he remembered every word. I was so angry I ground my teeth. And what if I'm tired of it all now? Where will you send me? Wherever Your Highness goes, I will take responsibility, he replied. Responsibility, responsibility. I shouted at him, furious. Is that all you ever say? I should never have expected anything more from marrying him. Eyes burning, I glared at him. Yan Jingyu, back then I fought for you. My ruined reputation was because of you. If you're going to take responsibility, then you'd better take it to the end. Ignoring the visible shock in his eyes, I stormed back to the princess's residence in a fit of rage. He was truly insufferable. If it hadn't been for seeing him standing there so honestly, getting bullied and not fighting back, how would I have lost my temper and beaten those noble brats to a pulp? That night, lying in bed, my heart ached with anger. I tossed and turned, but Yan Jingyu never returned. A maid reported from outside, Your Highness, the prince consort was summoned urgently to the palace.
Perfect.
He was clearly using that as an excuse to avoid me. Seething, I gathered up all of Yan Jingyu's clothes, stuffed them into a bundle, and out of a stupid pang of pity, added a box of fine tea leaves. Calling a servant in, I ordered, From now on, the prince consort will sleep in the study. This might not be appropriate. The servant stammered in fright. What's inappropriate? I barked. Since when did my princess's residence start carrying the Yen family's name? Why, yes. Right away. The servant scrambled away like the wind. Slow down, I yelled after him, half-stepping out the door. Don't spill the tea. I waited and waited, but Yan Jingyu remained missing, as if he had evaporated into thin air. Another day passed, and sure enough, it was confirmed. Yan Jingyu had moved into the study. The more I thought about it, the more stifled I felt. Slamming down the novel I had flipped through countless times, I stormed straight toward the study, fuming. Inside, Yan Jingyu was seated, surrounded by piles of memorials and official documents. A teapot of clear tea sent wisps of fragrance curling into the air. I lifted my skirts and crossed the threshold, gritting my teeth. The accommodations here are rather humble. Is Lord Yan managing to endure it? Yan Jingyu calmly set down his papers. Thank you for Your Highness's concern. Everything is fine. Bathed in tea-scented mist, he looked like a portrait of serene virtue, living up to the phrase. A humble room, yet filled with noble spirit. I nearly choked on my anger. Marching forward, I shoved aside the carefully organized memorials on his desk, scattering them everywhere, then climbed onto the table and sat, looming over him. Everything's fine? I sneered. Yan Jingyu, who had been leaning back slightly, suddenly leaned forward. His large hand clamped around my waist. The heat of his palm seared through the thin layers of my clothes, making me shiver. Before I could react, his hand slid lower along my spine. What are you doing? I yelped. In broad daylight, a dignified censor behaving so indecently. Ignoring my protests, Yan Jingyu reached down further. His hand gave a slight tug, and I instinctively grabbed his shoulders for support, letting out a small whimper. Something was yanked out from beneath me. Looking down, I saw it was a memorial, the ink still wet. Now the characters were all smudged into a big black mess. And my skirt. Just as I was about to jump down and check, I realized my waist was firmly locked against the desk by Yan Jingyu. I couldn't move at all. Yan Jingyu glanced at me and said, Forgive me for the offense, Your Highness. Offense? It was beyond offense. It was outrageous. Treacherous minister. Let go of me. I struggled to pry his hand away, but no matter how hard I tried, he didn't budge. Like a mountain, Yan Jingyu remained unmoved, still holding me in place, forcing me to sit atop the desk, face to face with him. He sat on his chair. I sat on the table. We were almost at eye level. "Your Highness," he said calmly, "this memorial took me half an hour to write." I laughed furiously.
Oh,
"Lord Yen, such remarkable composure. Even with a fire in your house, you still have time to write memorials stroke by stroke." "Where's the fire?" he asked. "Do I not look like it?" I roared. Yen Jingyu fell silent, simply meeting my gaze, without flinching. After a moment, the corner of his lips quirked up slightly. "Your Highness must be quite skilled at writing. Reap what you sow by now." I was absolutely livid. Reap what I sow. He was mocking me for banishing him to the study and ending up lonely myself. I grabbed the neatly folded collar of his robe and growled, "Give me back the tea leaves." Yen Jingyu raised a brow. "They're gone." "What do you mean, gone?" With a straight face, he replied, "I drank them." What a blatant lie. It had only been one day. Did he drink an entire box of tea like water? Furious, I balled my fists and hammered them against his chest. "How dare you lie to this princess?" "Feel free to search me," he said casually. Since he offered, of course, I wouldn't hold back. I yanked up his smooth, unwrinkled sleeve and rummaged inside. Nothing. Then I boldly pulled open his collar and reached inside, only to feel a solid wall of muscle. My cheeks flushed. "You treacherous minister! Where are you hiding it?" I barked, face burning. His once tidy sleeves were now rumpled messily around his arms, and his meticulously arranged robe was disheveled, exposing a broad expanse of his chest. Yen Jingyu's gaze darkened, and his grip on my waist tightened. I gasped in shock. Jean, he said in a low voice, "I told you I drank it." My shame turned into anger. "If you drank my tea, why didn't you come back to our room?" The words slipped out before I could stop myself. Horrified, I slapped a hand over my mouth. Damn it! Why had I said what was really in my heart? Yen Jingyu slowly stood up, changing from looking up at me to towering over me, pinning me down on the desk. His gaze was filled with a knowing look. "So that's what your Highness meant," he murmured. "No, it's not. Don't flatter yourself." I stammered. Yen Jingyu leaned in even closer until I could smell the faint, clean scent unique to him. At some point, I had grown used to his closeness, maybe even a little addicted. "Unfortunately," he said regretfully, "you messed up all of my memorials. I can't go back just yet." He wrapped an arm around my waist and spun me around, trapping me between himself and the desk, my back pressed against him. Feeling crushed and awkward, I squirmed and flushed bright red. You let me go." "Once your Highness sorts out the memorials, I will," he said. The documents were scattered into a hopeless mess across the desk. I couldn't even tell one from another. "I can't," I protested. Yen Jingyu made a quiet sound. "Then you'll have to accept your punishment." "Punishment? Outrageous. Yen Jingyu, how dare you punish me?" I shrieked and struggled, but it was useless. He stuffed 2 memorials into my hands. "Sort them." At first, I still had the spirit to argue back forcefully, but soon it changed into pitiful pleading. "Don't, not here, this isn't appropriate." Yen Jingyu's tone remained infuriatingly calm. "This humble official has plenty of time and energy to wait until your Highness sorts the documents. If your Highness still has energy left afterward, you may as well help write them too." His voice was so composed that anyone outside the room would think nothing amiss. Little would they know the chaos inside. The next day, I woke up on a small couch in the study. A thin blanket was draped over me. The moment I moved, ache spread through every joint and bone. I lifted the blanket and found myself fully dressed. My mind went blank for a moment. Supporting myself against the wall, I staggered step by step toward the desk, cautiously surveying the surroundings. There were no suspicious traces left behind. The memorials that had been scattered across the floor the night before were all neatly stacked, the ink-stained papers nowhere in sight. Even the brush I had dropped was gone. The desk was spotless, as if nothing had ever happened. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. At least I wouldn't need to set the study on fire to destroy the evidence. Still, Remembering those unspeakable moments made my breathing hitch and my cheeks flush. Thankfully, Yan Jingyu might have been outrageous in private, but when it came to cleaning up, he was always impeccable. Your Highness, a maid asked cautiously, should the prince consort continue sleeping in the study tonight? Still traumatized, I glanced at the clean, tidy desk and shook my head fiercely, cheeks burning.
No.
Lock the study. I'm never going back there again. By noon, it was clear that Yan Jingyu had gone to court. After finishing lunch, I couldn't help but ask, why hasn't the prince consort returned yet? Replying to Your Highness, the prince consort is at the city gate, arguing with the people from the Pingnan Marquis estate.
What?
Arguing? I was stunned. Yan Jingyu, the man with the face of an iceberg, arguing? This was a rare show I couldn't miss. Quick, prepare a horse. This princess is going to assist the prince consort. I spoke righteously, but inside I was grinning ear to ear. Riding swiftly to the gate where Yan Jingyu had just exited court, I spotted him from afar, tall and straight under the city gate, speaking calmly to the young lord of the Pingnan Marquis family. I got closer, hiding behind a vendor stall, just in time to hear the young lord sneer. You really dared to marry that woman, Songjian? Are you so desperate to live off a woman? The young lord from the Pingnan Marquis estate was the same one who had once cornered and bullied Yan Jingyu in an alley, and had his bones broken by my furious hand afterward. Yan Jingyu replied in his usual refined manner, just because someone wants a meal doesn't mean they can have it. I nearly burst out laughing, holding my stomach. Yan Jingyu's sharp tongue, I had tasted it myself, but this was the first time I saw him aim it at someone else. The young lord's face darkened with rage. Yan Jingyu, you used to hate her. What now? She's pleased you in bed, and all's forgiven. Yan Jingyu's originally calm expression turned cold. He took a step forward, his tall figure looming over the young lord, an oppressive, chilling aura radiating from him, one I had never seen before. The young lord staggered back 2 steps in fright. What am I wrong? If not for her little tricks. Young lord of Pingnan, Yan Jingyu said coolly, I heard your esteemed mother recently gifted a sea coral treasure to the palace. Should this official remind His Majesty to investigate where it came from? Young Lord Nan, still rattled, stammered, What sea coral? I'm talking about Songjian. Young Lord Nan has no respect for rank and dares insult the royal family, Yan Jingyu said coldly. This official will include that in my memorial as well. I'm sure your father will be thrilled to learn exactly why he's being impeached. Yan Jingyu, don't push me too far. Nan fumed. Who's pushing whom? Yan Jingyu asked calmly, folding his sleeves against the wind, standing tall and composed. With just a few words, he made Nan's expression change drastically. It is the duty of this official to uphold integrity, even if it means making enemies. I've grown used to hearing slander, he continued in a frosty tone. But there is one line that must never be crossed, family. Her Highness is the one closest to me. If anyone dares insult her, don't blame this official for being ruthless. I clamped my hands over my mouth, giddy with excitement. Under the curious gazes of nearby vendors, I stomped my feet and spun around twice, feeling there was no sight in the world more beautiful than Yan Jingyu standing proudly under the long streets, wine shops, and sunlight. Young Lord Nan, thoroughly humiliated, stumbled back like a beaten dog. As he fled, he shook his fist and shouted, Yan Jingyu, just you wait. Yan Jingyu's lips curved into a cold smirk. I'll be right here. I knew Nan wasn't going to let this go. Yan Jingyu had stood up for me. If something bad happened to him because of it, what would I do? I ducked into a corner and whispered, Acheng. A shadow swiftly appeared beside me. Acheng was the hidden bodyguard my father had assigned to me. I said, tie him up again. This time, I'll personally beat him. Yan Jingyu was mine. If the Pingnan Marquis house wanted to mess with him, they were messing with me. Last time, Acheng hadn't held back, and young Lord Nan had needed a bone-setting doctor afterward. Better if I handled it myself this time. No better day than today. Acheng quickly dragged Nan into an alley, threw a sack over his head, and shoved him to the ground. Gripping a thick club I had prepared long in advance, I rushed at him ferociously. Aching had taught me, when beating someone, aim for the buttocks. The alley echoed with young Lord Nan's miserable howls. After 7 or 8 satisfying strikes, I was raising the club for a 9th when cries sounded from the alley entrance. "Young master, where are you?" From inside the sack, Nan wailed frantically, limbs flailing. "I'm here. I'm here." Panicking, I tossed aside the club and frantically waved at Aching. "Run. Someone's coming." Without another word, I bolted into the depths of the alley. Aching followed silently behind. His martial arts were excellent, so I wasn't worried about him. It was just that he had a cleanliness obsession. He never touched people if he could help it. When it came to fleeing, it was every person for themselves. Behind me, young Lord Nan's furious shouts rang out. "They just ran off. Go catch them." Sticking out my tongue, I hitched up my skirt and sprinted, weaving and zigzagging through the narrow alleys. Finally, the exit came into view. But just as I was about to reach it, footsteps pounded closer from behind. Nervous, I tripped over a stone and cried out, "Ah!" A strong arm suddenly wrapped around my waist, yanking me into a hidden side alley. People rushed past without noticing. I landed against a broad, firm chest. Familiar scent enveloped me. Looking up, I gasped, "Yan Jingyu? What are you doing here?" Wasn't he supposed to have gone home already? Yet here he was, leaning against the wall, holding me tightly in his arms. "How much did you hear just now?" Yan Jingyu's sharp eyes bore into mine, reminding me of schoolmasters quizzing students back in the day. "What hear what?" I feigned ignorance, my gaze darting everywhere. Yan Jingyu's face darkened. "I'll ask one more time. How much did you hear of what he said?" Was he talking about Nan's foul insults? I shook my head guiltily, avoiding his eyes. "I didn't hear anything." "Then why were you coming out of the alley?" Why so many questions? Lowering my head, I said shamelessly, "I was just strolling around." Yan Jingyu's voice grew icy. "If I'm not mistaken, during your stroll, you happened to stumble across young Lord Nan getting beaten up?" "How did you know?" I blurted out.
Jean, he snapped.
"Do you ever consider the consequences of your actions?" His sudden anger startled me, and a pang of grievance rose in my chest. "What consequences?" I muttered. Yan Jingyu tightened his hold around me, his expression grim. "Do you really think the Pingnan Marquis family is so easy to deal with? Without backing, young Lord Nan wouldn't even dare call you by your name. The Pingnan family already gives His Majesty enough headaches. Why must you keep stirring up trouble?" Of course, I knew the Pingnan family was powerful, but everything I did was well covered. How could they trace it back to me? "So, what if they're powerful? I already hit him.
What are you going to do about it?"
I huffed, stomping my foot. And I wouldn't have bothered if it weren't for him. Yet, he didn't even appreciate it. Yan Jingyu was momentarily speechless, then said bitterly, "Indeed, I can't do anything to you. I'm the only one who can't." He let go and turned to leave. My heart gave a sharp tug. Grasping the last words he said, I rushed after him, shouting, "Yan Jingyu, what do you mean? Make it clear." Yan Jingyu's face was like a frozen sheet of ice. For the first time, I saw real emotion on his stoic face. He was angry. I tugged at his sleeve. He stopped but didn't shake me off. Seeing him remain silent, I bit my lip and mumbled awkwardly, "I couldn't just stand there and watch Nan hit you." Yan Jingyu half-turned and looked down at me. "Your Highness," he said, "violence doesn't solve problems. There's always a better way."
There's always a better way.
He had said that to me countless times, ever since we were children. Yet Pingnan Marquis' house was still standing strong. I was a princess. At least they couldn't do anything to me openly. At most, they mocked behind my back. But Yan Jingyu, an official, had nowhere to voice his grievances if bullied. I had long grown tired of hearing him preach. And what's the better way? I shot back. Let him beat and insult you while you just endure it? He can bully anyone, I said fiercely, but he can't bully you. Yan Jingyu flinched, then closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, the anger had faded into resignation. After a long pause, he sighed, reached out, and took my hand. "Just promise me," he said softly, "don't do things like this again." If young Lord Nan didn't cause trouble, I wouldn't even bother with him. I opened my mouth, wanting to retort, but swallowed the words. Grudgingly, I muttered, "Fine, Lord Yen." A few days later, I heard that Yen Jingyu had submitted a blistering impeachment memorial against the Pingnan Marquis's house. He dug out every last detail, including how their so-called sea coral offering to the palace had been acquired. As a result, young Lord Nan was beaten so badly by the Pingnan Marquis that he could barely get out of bed. Only then did I finally realize. So this was the better way he spoke of. I rested my chin on my hand and gazed out the window, suddenly feeling a little wistful for him. Sighing, I glanced at the half-eaten golden dates and the scattered walnut shells all over the table. "Your Highness, shall I keep cracking them?" the maid asked helplessly, holding a small hammer. Next to her, a porcelain jar was already filled with fragrant, plump walnut kernels. "Where's the prince consort?" asked for what felt like the 100th time this month. "The prince consort is busy with court affairs and is still at the palace," she replied. "Father didn't find me a husband. He found himself a free laborer." Hugging the jar tightly, I ordered, "Someone, prepare the carriage. I'm going to the palace." I found Yen Jingyu in the warm pavilion next to the imperial study. Memorials were stacked like mountains around him, burying him completely. He was impeccably dressed, without the slightest trace of fatigue, as if he hadn't been missing for several days. Father really had no conscience, working him nearly to death. I plopped the jar of walnuts down right in front of him. "Lord Yen, did you forget? After marrying out, this princess moved out of the palace." Without waiting for his reply, I exclaimed in mock surprise, "No way. Did you lose your memory? Did you forget that I'm no longer living here, or forget that you're married?" Yen Jingyu put down his brush and rubbed his forehead with a sigh. "Your Highness, His Majesty is preparing for the southern inspection. There are endless arrangements to be made." "Southern inspection?" My eyes lit up with interest. "I want to go too." His Majesty's southern tour is meant to inspect the people's conditions. "Your Highness doesn't need to tag along," Yen Jingyu said, shaking his head, adamant. "If you can go, why can't I?" "Your Highness," Yen Jingyu said calmly, his dark eyes unperturbed, "this humble official has no time to accompany you sightseeing. Besides, it was His Majesty's will that you stay." "So, you weren't even going to tell me?"
"No."
"You planned to just leave the capital without a word?" Yen Jingyu looked at me for a long moment before answering slowly, "Your Highness is most perceptive." Furious, I stormed off to find Father. He was staying in Consort Ro's palace that night. When I barged in, half the table of delicacies had already been eaten. A piece of emerald tofu still clung to Father's beard, trembling with every breath. Consort Ro quickly stood up when she saw me. "Oh dear, my memory's terrible. I just remembered, the kitchen is still stewing ginseng soup. I'll fetch it." Father grabbed her sleeve, awkwardly. "And no need, I'm full, sit down, sit down." Smiling sweetly, Consort Ro pried his fingers off one by one and forced out between her teeth. Perfect timing. Ginseng soup's good for digestion. I marched up to the table and slapped my palm down with a loud bang. "You're all bullying me together." Consort Ro fled as if escaping a ghost, leaving Father behind to wipe the tofu off his beard, forcing a stiff smile. Jean, when has Father ever bullied you?" "I want to join the southern tour," I demanded, my eyes blazing. "You're all trying to leave me behind." Father's beard trembled. He tugged me down into a seat, speaking earnestly, Jean, it's not that I don't want you to go. It's just, Yen Jingyu doesn't want you to. You see, the South isn't peaceful lately. It's dangerous.
He's worried about you."
If something happens, you're my one and only precious daughter." "How long will you be gone?" "Half a month at least, maybe half a year. But everything you need is here in the capital." "I don't care. I want to go with Yen Jingyu." "Absolutely not. Half a month apart was unacceptable. Father's face twisted into a smile he dared not let out. Jean. Father promises you. I'll make sure Yenjingyu comes back safe and sound. Jean's grown up now, knows how to care about her husband.
I'm not worried about him,
I shouted. You too just want to toss me aside. Father hurriedly shook his head. Nonsense. You're father's favorite princess. No one can toss you aside. Grabbing his arm, I pleaded. Then take me with you. Sweat started beading on father's forehead. This, Yan Jingyu's fighting power isn't any weaker than his father's. Don't push father into the fire pit. So, it was still Yan Jingyu causing trouble behind the scenes. Narrowing my eyes like a thief, I leaned closer and whispered, Father, take me along. I'll help you deal with Yan Jingyu. Father's beard twitched. With a guilty cough, he said, Double what nonsense. I'm the emperor. Why would I fear a censor? I narrowed my eyes and smiled darkly. Not afraid he'll accuse you of touring the south just to chase after pretty women? Father's face stiffened. Not afraid he'll force you to work through the night, approving memorials? Father's hands trembled. Not afraid he'll make you eat nothing but vegetarian dishes 3 meals a day? Father, in a panic, stabbed his chopsticks into the nearest braised pork elbow. Someone, bring ink. He scribbled a few rushed lines onto a decree, shoved the imperial order into my hands, and waved frantically. Go. Get out of here. Don't let your husband catch you. I glanced at it. He was so terrified someone might recognize his handwriting. As I left, Father kept whispering urgently, Hide it well, don't let him find out. Consort Ro reappeared, carrying the soup, her smile dazzling. Your Highness is leaving? Beaming with triumph, I nodded. Sorry for disturbing you tonight, your ladyship. Consort Ro shook her head vigorously, her voice syrupy sweet. Oh, no trouble at all. She even personally escorted me out, and the moment my foot crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me with a loud clack, bolted tight like I was some kind of demon. As I was leaving the palace, a young servant boy in gray ran up to me. Your Highness, the censor lord sent me to escort you home. My eyes widened. Yan Jingyu sent you? Since when is he so considerate? Then again, he probably just wanted me locked up quietly in the princess's residence, never stepping foot outside again. I patted the imperial edict hidden inside my sleeve and grew more cheerful. Send someone to ask when Lord Yan plans to return, I ordered smugly. I have something important to tell him. Back at the residence, I proudly spread out the imperial decree right on the table by the entrance, making sure it would be the first thing Yan Jingyu saw when he returned. But night fell, and he didn't come back. When I opened my eyes again, the sun was already high in the sky. The thin sheet of imperial paper still lay silently on the table, untouched. A bad feeling welled up in my heart. I summoned a servant. Where is Yan Jingyu? The servant, loyal and proper, replied, Your Highness, today His Majesty departed for the southern tour. The censor lord went along with the delegation. Naturally, he set off from the palace without returning here. What? Today? I screamed. Why didn't anyone tell me? I rushed to open the wardrobe. Damn it! Half of Yan Jingyu's clothes were already missing. Even his personal seals were gone. He had planned this all along. How dare he trick me? Where are they now? I asked. They just left the city gates. Your Highness can still catch up if you hurry. I didn't even bother packing luggage, whipped my horse and charged straight out of the city. On the rural official road, from a low-key but luxurious carriage, Father's hesitant voice floated out. My dear minister, if Jean finds out I listened to your advice and tricked her, do you think she'll stop talking to me? Yan Jingyu's voice, as always, was calm and steady, utterly unshaken. Your Highness's safety is more important than anything. Yes, you're right, Father said hastily. Oh, he's right? Very. Father's voice cut off abruptly. The next second, his terrified face popped out from behind the carriage curtains. Jean. Through the lifted curtain, I could see Yan Jingyu's back stiffen instantly. Grinding my teeth, I said, Father, your arm twisting outward. Doesn't that hurt? So father was playing double agent so brilliantly. Father ducked his head back inside the carriage and muttered, "My dear minister, it's not that I'm heartless. A daughter married off is like water spilled. Wives are still your own responsibility." Yan Jingyu stepped out of the carriage, his face ice cold, a chill radiating from his body. Suddenly, he yanked on the reins, kicked off the ground, and landed neatly behind me on my horse. His chest pressed against my back, and his hands firmly took the reins, locking me in his arms. The steady, powerful thud of his heartbeat pounded against my back. Still stunned from the earlier shock, I muttered, "You seem pretty healthy." "Didn't your highness already know that?" he said meaningfully. The ambiguity in his words made me blush. Yan Jingyu spurred the horse forward, saying coldly, "There's a carriage ahead. I'll escort your highness there." "You're not forcing me to go back?" I asked cautiously. Lowering his head close to my ear, he murmured, "The southern inspection is underway. We can't delay the entire convoy because of you. Besides, if I sent you back, would you listen?" His breath brushed against my ear, and all the emotions I'd buried these past days rushed to the surface. I twisted the horse's mane into knots, filled with grievance. "If you had just agreed earlier, I wouldn't have wasted a whole night tossing and turning." Yan Jingyu was silent for a long moment before saying quietly, "Your highness could have chosen not to toss and turn." I was fuming.
Fine.
"If you didn't want me, who did you want? Were you planning to chase after some southern beauty? Maybe even bring one back for me to raise?" I knew perfectly well that Yan Jingyu, raised under strict family discipline, would never indulge in such scandalous behavior. Even if he didn't love me, he would still dutifully fulfill the role of a husband. But I wanted to provoke him, to force him to say something real. Sure enough, my outrageous accusation finally angered him. Yan Jingyu yanked the reins to a stop, dismounted, and without giving me a chance to resist, lifted me clean off the horse, one arm under my thighs, the other supporting my back. My blood rushed to my head. My mind went completely blank. I was the princess of Great Xia, cherished and revered, and now I was being carried like a sack of rice in front of everyone. Humiliated, I shouted, "Yan Jingyu, put me down." "You may not realize," he said in a low, steely voice, "but the southern route is filled with danger. Since you insisted on leaving the capital, it is this official's duty to ensure your safety. If your highness refuses to behave, do not blame me for being harsh." With that, he tossed me straight into the carriage. I knew full well how strong Yan Jingyu was. If he truly meant to tie me up, I wouldn't be able to do anything except cry. "You're shameless." I kicked at him in frustration. "Enough." Yan Jingyu's face darkened as he pressed me down onto the couch inside the carriage. "Your highness, in the capital, you have His Majesty's favor and this official's protection. You can do as you please, cause whatever trouble you want. But this southern inspection is no game. Those corrupt officials and treacherous ministers kill without blinking, smiling even as they stab you. If you value your life, you'd better behave." His words filled me with fear. But deep down, I also wanted to see for myself. What did those corrupt officials and disasters he spoke of really look like? Born into luxury, I had little understanding of the hardships of common people. Still, I knew that food was the foundation of stability. Over the years, I had secretly saved large sums of silver, funding soup kitchens and building houses in secret. When the East suffered droughts and the South floods, I quietly donated money to ease the suffering. Father knew I had piles of money and often received secret donations from me, but no one else did. If you brag about doing good deeds, it cheapens the act. That's what I believed. In the carriage, Yan Jingyu didn't even glance at me. He tucked a warm hand warmer into my hands and poured me a cup of clean water. "I want to eat plum blossom pastries," I demanded. "None." "I want golden thread dates." "None." "Then what about the walnuts I gave you?" "None." Fuming, I punched him in the chest. "What do you have?" Yan Jingyu caught my fist easily in his palm and pulled me into his arms, his voice weary. "Your highness, just rest. There's nothing left." I struggled but couldn't break free. Lifting my head, I glared at him. A gust of wind swept through the curtain, casting a faint light over his face. Only then did I notice the slight shadows under his eyes. I froze. Yen Jingyu was always pale and composed, meticulously neat, yet now, up close, there was a hint of exhaustion. Had he really not rested at all these past few days? I fell silent. Before long, drowsiness overtook me. Nodding off against his broad shoulder, I finally slumped fully onto him. Yen Jingyu, I'm sleepy, I mumbled. He replied, and I thought I heard a trace of tenderness in his voice. This official is here. Sleep well, Your Highness. I woke up to the jostling of the carriage. It was dim inside. I was still curled up on Yen Jingyu's lap. His arms circled me firmly, one palm pressed against my waist, his body heat seeping through my clothes, making my heart race. I realized, mortified, that I was clinging to him like an octopus, and that I had drooled all over his chest. Yen Jingyu leaned his head back against the carriage wall, eyes closed, long lashes casting shadows across his pale skin. For a moment, I found him incredibly handsome. Setting aside all his heinous crimes, I had to admit, his looks were very much to my liking. He had both literary and martial talents, and his body was strong and lean. My face instantly burned. What on earth was I thinking? Suddenly, Yen Jingyu's cold, clear eyes opened, catching my gaze. There was a lazy drowsiness lingering in his eyes, making him even more dangerously attractive. He didn't say a word, just stare at me quietly. Flustered, I quickly averted my gaze, terrified he would see through my secret thoughts. When did Your Highness wake up? His voice was raspy with sleep, and it practically melted my bones. This man is lethal. I fumbled for words, looking elsewhere. And not long ago. An awkward silence stretched between us. Panicking, I shot to my feet and thunk, smashed my head against the low roof of the carriage. Tears welled up from the pain. Yen Jingyu sighed and pulled me back down, rubbing my forehead gently. Your Highness must learn to curb that rash temper. Enough. Stop it, I muttered, knowing he was about to start lecturing again. I hated listening to your lectures since I was a child. Unfortunately, he said coolly, unless something unexpected happens, Your Highness will be stuck with this humble official for the rest of your life. His casual reminder sent a bittersweet ache through my chest. Maybe I really did like him a little. I'd fought with him since we were little, and now somehow I liked him? Lost in my thoughts, I didn't notice that Yen Jingyu had already unfolded a map and was studying it closely. I leaned over. What are you looking at? Without lifting his head, he replied, the military defense layout of Jiangnan. I blinked. You understand this stuff? He slowly raised his eyes, his expression unreadable. Censors are tasked with criticizing matters of the empire. How can I fulfill my duty if I only know half the truth? My mind blanked. A serious man really is attractive. You like military affairs. Why not become a military officer? Why waste your youth arguing with a bunch of old fogies? Yen Jingyu paused for a moment before replying calmly, Your Highness, a prince consort must not hold military power. It's the rule. This time it was my turn to be stunned. If I had known earlier, if I had known that marrying me would destroy his future, I would never have forced it. Yen Jingyu was born into a noble, upright family. He was brilliant and capable, praised by father since childhood. He was also exceptionally handsome. By the time he came of age, matchmakers had practically trampled down the Yen family doors. Father had once said, Yen Jingyu was a talent who could one day be granted a marquisate and lead the nation. And now, because of a moment of stubbornness, I had ruined it all. A heavy ache welled up in my heart. Just when I finally realized I liked him, I found out what a terrible mistake I had made. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice trembling as I fought back tears. A flicker of surprise crossed Yen Jingyu's eyes. When he saw my red-rimmed eyes, he looked momentarily flustered, hurriedly wiping away my tears. I don't blame you. Why not? His gentleness only made me sob harder. You ruined your own reputation for my sake, he said quietly. It's only right that I marry you. So that was it. It wasn't love. Just responsibility. I don't want you to owe me anything. I said, voice muffled with resentment. When we return, let's divorce. You can go back to being a general, no need to worry about me. Yen Jingyu's previously gentle expression froze. His eyes grew dark and complicated. What did you just say? I said we should divorce, I said firmly, thinking he was moved by my selflessness. You'll be free. Say it again, he growled. I heard his molars grinding audibly.
D.
Song Zhan, he roared, calling me by my full name. I jumped, scared stiff. Why are you yelling? Fury burned in Yen Jingyu's eyes. He grabbed me by the waist and, with one strong arm, pulled me tightly against him. I married you, he said in a low, fierce voice. There will be no divorce. No separation. Get that idea out of your head. I couldn't believe it. It had to be nothing more than his cursed sense of duty. While I was still dazed, I heard him say, Have you thought about it? If you bear a child in the future, how will you explain that he is no father? I retorted reflexively, It's only been a few days. Who says you're so accurate that one shot would hit the mark? The moment the words left my mouth, I realized something was wrong. Yen Jingyu's gaze darkened dangerously. That look, I knew it all too well. It was the look he gave right before trouble. Thinking fast, I shouted preemptively, So you're not divorcing me because you love me. It's just because you need someone to give you an heir. Zhan, Yen Jingyu said in a low, restrained voice. You know that's not what I meant. Stop twisting my words. He pinched my chin, and before I could react, he kissed me. Hearing him call my name, so intimately, so seductively, made my heart pound wildly. For the first time in my life, I thought, Father really picked me a good name. The carriage swayed as it moved, and though Yen Jingyu's kiss was light, it left my lips swollen and sore. I ended up leaning limply against his chest, swinging my legs idly, like a spoiled child. I remembered sitting like this on grandmother's lap when I was little, and Yen Jingyu, even as a boy, had scolded me for being improper. Now, sitting in his lap, I teased, You used to hate it when I sat like this. How does it feel to experience it yourself? Yen Jingyu didn't expect me to bring up old grievances. After a brief pause, he said evenly, Between husband and wife, it's not improper. Shameless. But still, he was mine and he defended me. And I liked it. Thinking of that, a sour feeling stirred in my chest. If you had married someone else, I muttered, would you have held her like this? Whispered sweet words to her. It was a fatal question, one even I felt a little guilty asking. He hadn't liked me back then. Maybe he didn't like me much now. If he had married some sweet, delicate lady instead, they would have had a perfect, loving marriage, a life of harmony. The thought made jealousy simmer inside me. Yen Jingyu chuckled softly. Is your highness jealous of this humble official? You're imagining things. I snapped. You think you're so great I'd be jealous of you? Yen Jingyu's gaze deepened, steady and unhurried. My mother was just an ordinary woman from the capital, he said. She and my father lived respectfully together their whole lives. My father was often away for work. She stayed up waiting for him night after night, until she fell ill and died before reaching 30. His voice was calm, but I could hear the deep weight hidden beneath. In the Yen family, the men are loyal to the emperor, but often fail their wives and children. If not for your highness insisting on marrying me, he said with a faint smile, this humble official may never have taken a wife at all. You wouldn't marry? Then the Yen family line would end. I blurted out. Indeed, Yen Jingyu said, a rare, warm glint flickering in his eyes. Your highness saved this humble official from a life of loneliness. I am most grateful. Once upon a time, I had found Yen Jingyu's every word sharp and unpleasant. I never thought there would be a day when even a single line from his lips could warm my heart. Lord Yen, the mountain road ahead is muddy and there may be landslides. Should we take a detour? Someone outside the carriage reported. I frowned in confusion. What does this have to do with you, Censor Lord? Are they bullying you? Rolling up my sleeves, I was about to storm out and argue with those useless old scholars when Yen Jingyu stopped me. Wait here. I'll go check it out, he said. Why? I stood up abruptly. Since when does my prince consort take orders from them? I'll go slice them up myself. Yan Jingyu sighed helplessly, pulled me into his arms, and pressed a kiss to my lips to silence me. My head went dizzy from the kiss. I caught a glimpse of laughter dancing in Yan Jingyu's eyes. It hit me then he was only 25 this year. He could laugh, he could be angry, he could be tender. He was simply reserved, always talking about duty and country, so he wasn't as likable at first glance. I thought of all those rich young lords back in the capital, still chasing cats and dogs, while Yan Jingyu had already silently shouldered so many burdens. A surge of pride filled my chest. This man is mine. Feeling shy, I avoided his gaze. The carriage curtain fell back into place with a soft snap, and I immediately dove onto the couch, rolling around like a cat who'd fallen into a vat of honey. During this journey, Father had gone incognito, traveling rough and without many attendants. I lost weight at a speed visible to the naked eye. The roundness in my cheeks disappeared, leaving me with a delicate, standard melon seed face, and somehow, it made me look more charming than before. Every time Father looked at me, he would sigh dramatically. Jean. Father's still waiting to hold a grandchild. You too. I would only roll my eyes in response. Yan Jingyu, meanwhile, would always say the same thing with utmost decorum. This humble official will do his best. And he certainly did. Otherwise, I wouldn't have lost weight so quickly. Yan Jingyu said I had been spoiled since childhood and needed to toughen up. Little did I expect this to be his idea of exercise. I secretly cursed him countless times, so prim and proper on the outside, yet a beast behind closed doors. We traveled lightly from the capital, and within half a month, arrived at Suzhou. Pretending to be a merchant caravan from the capital, we entered the city slowly. Passing by Fangzi Lake, the soft Wu dialect floated gently on the breeze. I looked up and saw rows of painted boats docked along the riverside. Graceful girls in flowing robes cradled their lutes, singing in lilting voices. I tugged Yan Jingyu's sleeve excitedly. Hey, that girl in green sings the best. Later I'll take you to listen to her performance. Your Highness, this humble official has no interest in music, Yan Jingyu replied calmly, not even lifting his eyes. I'm already used to hearing your Highness's sweet murmurs. I don't wish to listen to anyone else. When have I ever? I froze mid-sentence, suddenly realizing the implication behind his words. My face flamed scarlet. You shameless. How am I shameless? He asked innocently. How can you say such things? This humble official is ignorant. Would your Highness care to explain? Yan Jingyu always spoke with that poised, aristocratic air, making it impossible for me to argue. I had probably angered him too much in the past. Now he clearly enjoyed our verbal spars, while I was utterly outmatched. He lived by his words, and when it came to fists, well, I didn't stand a chance there either. He had me wrapped around his little finger. While I was racking my brain for a way to turn the tables, the governor of Suzhou arrived. Why is a government official coming to check on us? I muttered, about to lift the curtain to sneak a peek at the infamous Governor Wang, when Yan Jingyu grabbed me back. Rich merchants from the capital, he said calmly. A cunning man like him would be especially sensitive to any unusual activity. Suzhou looks peaceful and prosperous. The governor seems to be doing a good job. You censors always love to think the worst of people, I grumbled. Yan Jingyu's hand froze midair. Your Highness, he said, be careful you don't end up helping the people who are trying to sell you out. The next moment, Governor Wang's greasy voice floated in. Gentlemen, you must be weary from your travels. I have prepared fine wine and beautiful companions at my residence. Please, allow me to treat you to a taste of Suzhou's charms. I saw red. Yan Jingyu might be reserved and uptight, but he was still young and devastatingly handsome. If he were to walk the streets of the capital, he'd be pelted with embroidered pouches by smitten young ladies. And now someone dared to openly tempt him? Absolutely not. Even Father wouldn't agree. Oh, beautiful women. Father's voice drifted over eagerly from the next carriage. Beautiful women. Excellent. I've heard Suzhou produces beauties. Haha. Old Huang loves beauties the most. I clenched my teeth, so hard they creaked. Yan Jingyu quickly wrapped an arm around me, sensing I might leap over and overturn father's carriage. He whispered in my ear, "The strong dragon cannot suppress the local serpent. If we offend Governor Wang now, we'll all be buried here tonight. Your father is just playing along." Out in the world, Yan Jingyu changed how he addressed father, using proper terms. True enough, father hadn't ruled the empire for years without having some tricks up his sleeve. But still, what father-in-law took his son-in-law to a brothel? Had I not insisted on coming, I dared not imagine the scene of father and Yan Jingyu walking shoulder to shoulder into some shady place, laughing like a pair of old scoundrels. "May I ask who else is traveling with the Lord?" Governor Wang inquired. "My wife is at home," father said impatiently. "These two are my daughter and son-in-law." "Ah, son-in-law." Governor Wang hesitated, then added, "That might be inconvenient." "No inconvenience at all." Father nearly grabbed his hand in brotherhood. "My daughter is very open-minded. It's just some music and singing. No harm done." I crushed the pastry in my hand into crumbs. Father was still, as always, perfectly shameless. "And the son-in-law's opinion?" Governor Wang asked tentatively through the curtain. I turned my head slowly, shooting Yan Jingyu a look that could kill. If he dared say anything inappropriate, I would strangle him on the spot. Yan Jingyu remained calm, unmoved as a mountain. "My wife is quite clingy," he said smoothly. "If it doesn't trouble the Lord, I would like to bring her along." Seeing that we knew how to play along, Governor Wang ordered his men to lead our horses and escort us to his residence. "What if we refuse?" I grumbled under my breath. Yan Jingyu's hand lightly kneaded my waist. Earlier, Wang's men surrounded us so tightly that not even a fly could escape. If we refused, we wouldn't leave this place alive. I suddenly recalled Yan Jingyu's warning on the first day. He hadn't been exaggerating after all. This trip was truly dangerous. Maybe he had left me behind in the capital for my own good. A warm feeling spread in my heart. Governor Wang's residence looked shabby from the outside. But once we stepped inside, I was stunned. It was pure gold and jade hidden behind rotten walls. The treasures on display outshone even the princess's residence. However, this governor's taste was atrocious. Everything was gaudily crammed together, gold and jade artifacts stuffed into every corner. There was a garden built alongside a lake, now crammed full of singing girls. Lanterns shone brightly, music and laughter filled the air, a true den of extravagant pleasure. I had a rough idea of what these people were planning. No matter if you were a high-ranking official or a wealthy merchant from the capital, so long as your status was notable, they would bring you here, offering good wine, fine food, beautiful women, and charming songs. People with desires had weaknesses. A single banquet was enough for Wang Nian to figure out your preferences, cozy up to you, and send you off satisfied. As for the injustices happening across Suzhou, buried away in dark alleys where no one cared to look, Wang Nian sat at the head seat, his gaze sweeping over my face several times. With a laugh, he said, "Miss is truly beautiful, more stunning by 3 points than any of the concubines in my household. The young lord is blessed indeed." I usually enjoyed being flattered, but somehow, Wang Nian's words made my skin crawl. Yan Jingyu tightened his grip around my arm slightly and said calmly, "My wife is the greatest treasure of my life. I would protect her with my own life." Although he said it to warn Wang Nian against harboring inappropriate thoughts, hearing Yan Jingyu say such words out loud, clear and unambiguous, in front of others, made my heart pound wildly. It was the first time he confessed to loving me, true and unmistakable. Wang Nian burst into hearty laughter and moved the conversation along. "Lord Huang, let's not meddle in these young folks' matters. But come, let me show you a treasure." He clapped his hands. "Shuji, come play a tune for our esteemed guests." A flash of green silk caught my eye. A young woman stepped out from behind a screen, her delicate skirt fluttering in the breeze. It was the same woman I had seen singing by the lake earlier. Father's eyes immediately glazed over, drinking by himself and grinning foolishly. Shuji's flirtatious gaze swept the room, lingering last on Yen Jingyu. Gracefully, she perched herself lightly on the edge of a chair, lute resting on her lap. Her slender fingers plucked the strings, matching the flirtatious curve of her smile, letting a soft, bewitching melody float into the air. I felt a sudden rush of heat to my nose. Before I could embarrass myself, Yen Jingyu promptly pressed a handkerchief to my face. "Madam, please behave yourself," he murmured. Mortified, I clutched the handkerchief tightly and ordered through gritted teeth, "You're not allowed to look at her." Yen Jingyu glanced at the blood-stained fabric in my hand and chuckled lightly. "It's not me who's bleeding from the nose." Even though I was quite familiar with music, I had to admit, Shuji was incredibly skilled. If she showed up in my residence, I'd have immediately appointed her as a court musician. But right now, she wasn't behaving properly. She fluttered her lashes like some spider spirit, casting her webs everywhere. If I weren't here, she would probably have wrapped Yen Jingyu up tightly and dragged him away by now. Wang Mian obviously intended to present her to father. Unfortunately for him, father was too old, and clearly not to Shuji's liking. After 3 rounds of drinks, Wang Mian finally made his move, offering Shuji to father. Father tried to refuse several times but eventually gave in, taking her back to the small guest house Wang Mian had prepared for us. Calling it a guest house was generous. The walls were so low that even a chicken could fly over them. While I was called away by Wang Yan's wife to admire the scenery, Shuji stayed behind. When I returned and stepped into the courtyard, what I saw almost made my blood boil. Shuji was seducing Yen Jingyu. "My heart is racing, my lord. Please feel it for yourself," Shuji said, lifting her thin veil to reveal a smooth, pulley shoulder as she tottered toward Yen Jingyu. Yen Jingyu sidestepped coldly, avoiding her lunge with a step back. "I appreciate your affections, miss, but I already have a wife." "I am not your destined match," he said flatly. Seeing her plan fail, Shuji twisted her waist enticingly and pouted tearfully. "Even if the main wife is jealous, this concubine is willing to endure." "How lovely," I said sweetly, stepping over the threshold with my skirts lifted. I stood proudly in the middle of the courtyard, smiling icily. "My dear, you're calling yourself a concubine already? Shouldn't you at least serve me tea first?" Shuji gasped, tripped, and fell flat on her face. She quickly pushed herself up, casting me a venomous look, but still, she turned her teary gaze back to Yen Jingyu. "My lord," she whimpered. Yen Jingyu turned to me immediately, cupping his hands in greeting, his expression warming noticeably. "I have been waiting for you, my lady." Shuji must have gotten drunk and stumbled into the wrong courtyard. The look Shuji gave me was venomous. I stared her down for a long moment before suddenly bursting into loud, pitiful sobs. "Husband," she's glaring at me. "I'm scared." Yen Jingyu's steps faltered, his expression freezing on the spot. Shuji's weak, pitiful facade cracked instantly, her face twitched uncontrollably. With a swoop of my long sleeve, I collapsed bonelessly into Yen Jingyu's arms, wrapping my arms around his waist and burying my face against him, sobbing. "Husband, now that you have Shuji, will you not love Jean-Jean anymore?" When it came to throwing a tantrum, I was second to none. From a young age, whenever I cried, father, grandmother, all my elder brothers, and even the empresses would instantly surrender. My brothers often said a single pout from me could melt all the young lords in the capital. Thus they spoiled me into an arrogant little tyrant to scare off the wrong kinds of people. But with Yen Jingyu, I had always fought tooth and nail, never once acting coy. Yen Jingyu's heart was pounding wildly. I could hear it clearly where my ear rested against his chest. From above came his low, strained voice. "When did I ever say I would take a concubine?" Tears clinging to my lashes, I looked up at him and stammered. "Really? Husband won't take a concubine?" Yen Jingyu's face was tight and serious. He met my teary gaze and finally uttered a firm word. "Yes." I turned to look at Shuji, who was visibly shaking. Wiping my tears with one graceful finger, I flashed her a victorious smile. You know how to flutter your lashes. Well, guess what? I do too. I can also hit my husband.
Can you?
Shuji pointed at me, her lips trembling so hard they turned white. You. If you can't do anything, why should we keep you around? I said fiercely, my anger finally bursting through after being held back for so long. If I hadn't shown up in time, would Yan Jingyu have been forced into a romantic chase under the moonlight with this woman? I was sent by Lord Wang. Shuji cried desperately. If the lady dislikes me, then go complain to Lord Wang yourself. Persistent as a leech. I smiled sweetly, crouching down to tidy up her disheveled clothing piece by piece. Be good. Your room is next door. Father's face peeked nervously through the bamboo fence, looking guilty.
No.
I can't bring her back either. It's still a life, after all. A girl like Shuji wouldn't survive a day in the palace. But was this really why he tried to shove her onto Yan Jingyu? I sneered coldly and said to Shuji, crawl, or I'll kill you right here. Seeing she had no hope with us and no courage to cling to father, Shuji pitifully crawled to the fence, clutching the vines. Please, my lord, take me in. Otherwise, Lord Wang will never let me live. It's not that I don't want to take you. Father stammered, his mustache twitching wildly. But, our household isn't big enough for fools. You wouldn't survive without a brain. The imperial palace was no ordinary place. If you went in with flesh and blood, you'd come out as dust, if you came out at all. Girlie, if you want a way out, Yan Jingyu said calmly, you'd better start talking. What followed was a coordinated act, Yan Jingyu and father taking turns with gentle persuasion and implied threats, while I wielded a knife at the side, face twisted in a ferocious grimace. Under our combined pressure, Shuji completely broke down. Whoa, you people are too much, she bawled, tears streaming down her face. What's wrong with your whole family? Lord Wang only told me to come here and spy a little, but you, every single one of you, are threatening to kill me. She jabbed a trembling finger at Lord Huang and cursed. You bragged like crazy, saying your family lives in the palace. Bullshit. Once you're in there, you're dead. Lord Huang scratched his head sheepishly.
No.
Wouldn't dare. She then turned on Yan Jingyu, gritting her teeth. And you, pretty boy, you just do whatever she says? Are you henpecked? Coward. Yan Jingyu, holding my hand solemnly, said, I respect my wife, love her, and obey her not out of fear, but out of genuine reverence. You're mistaken, miss. Shuji almost rolled her eyes into the back of her head. Gasping for breath, she then pointed a trembling finger at me. And you? What about me? I stepped forward, hands on my hips, glaring down at her. I was overjoyed by what Yan Jingyu had just said and couldn't hide the triumph in my voice. My husband adores me, loves me, and listens to me. What can I do about it? Go bite him, if you're that mad. Shuji cried, even harder. Whoa, there was no need to rub it in. Eventually, Shuji poured out her whole story. She was born into a scholarly family with a marriage already arranged. She was supposed to marry into a family in Tongzhou that spring. But disaster struck during the midsummer floods. Tongzhou, lying along the river, was 90% submerged. The people lost their crops. Her fiancé's family opened their granary to help, only to catch the greedy eye of the local magistrate. Soldiers were dispatched overnight to seize everything. Worried sick, Shuji rushed to Tongzhou, only to be robbed by desperate refugees along the way. After much hardship, she learned her fiancé's family had perished. Refusing to accept it, she tried to head to the capital to lodge a complaint, but was intercepted by Wang Mian. Wang Mian pretended he would help me sue the magistrate. Shuji wept bitterly. But he's just as rotten as that dog official. They're in it together. The relief funds meant for Tongzhou, Wang Mian stole them, shipped everything to Tsuzhou. He said they'd wait until winter, when the river froze, and then build the dikes at half the cost. My head buzzed. The Tongzhou flood. Hadn't I donated a large amount of silver for that disaster? Thinking of all the glittering luxuries displayed in Wang Nian's mansion, I shot to my feet. I'll kill that bastard. Yan Jingyu held me back, sighing. It's the dead of night. Who are you going to kill? I was so furious I could barely see straight. Half a year of cutting back on pastries, plum blossom cakes, donpa pork, sweet and sour fish. All those savings, gone to buy some turtle's golden chamber pots. Damn him to hell. Shuji covered her face, sobbing uncontrollably. My poor fiancé, after losing everything, he fled here and starved to death outside Suzhou. Father's face darkened like a thundercloud. In our dynasty's laws, he growled, neighboring prefectures must set up food shelters when disasters strike. How did he starve to death? Shuji gave a bitter smile. You nobles live in the capital, you have no idea. The emperor is too far away. Refugees dying outside city gates? That news would never reach His Majesty's ears. She didn't know that the emperor was sitting right next to her, hearing everything. And not just starving, Shuji continued grimly. Anyone who rioted, anyone who tried to lodge a complaint, they were all thrown in prison. I thought you were nobles, she added quietly, and hoped to hitch a ride to the capital. But this is an official's matter. If you won't help, I understand. Husband, I'm helping no matter what, I declared, fuming. Not just for Shuji and her fiancé, but also for the countless silver taels I had painstakingly saved up. Yan Jingyu didn't agree. You should behave. Leave this matter to me, he said firmly. Father slammed his hand down on the table. I'll chop that bastard's head off myself. Shuji gave a bitter smile and shook her head. Your goodwill is enough. Please just prepare your excuses well. I'll go report back to Lord Wang to make sure you leave Suzhou safely. Little did Shuji know, the seemingly harmless Lord Huang, sitting nearby, was already calculating. When Wang Yan was beheaded, who should he assign to swing the executioner's blade? Thanks to Shuji's assistance, the next day Wang Yan, all smiles, personally sent us out of the city. When he heard we were headed for Qinchuan, he couldn't even hide the glee on his face. Qinchuan was prosperous, a hub of trade and culture, completely opposite from Tongzhou, which lay to the east. Wang Yan repeatedly urged us to head south, warning solemnly that the east was flooded and absolutely impassable. 10 miles out of Suzhou, Yan Jingyu made his move. Wang Yan's spies were quietly rooted out one by one, and our main party, still disguised as merchants, turned directly toward Tongzhou. Meanwhile, a smaller detachment raced south overnight to the Lingnan military camp. Every operation ran tightly and efficiently under Yan Jingyu's command. The weather had turned chilly. Along the dirt roads, between yellowing fields, bodies lay scattered, some still warm, others long dried out. From elderly widows to toddling children, all were reduced to skin and bones. Their empty eyes, even in death, still stared longingly in the direction of Suzhou. These refugees had no idea that not just a few dozen miles ahead, but right beneath the towering gates of wealthy Suzhou itself, the scene was the same. Suzhou's gates had been shut. No one was allowed in. I went pale, turned my head, and vomited everything I had eaten the day before. My tears blurred my vision as the stench around me made my head spin. Yan Jingyu supported me, shielding my eyes with his hand. Jean, he said gently, go back to the carriage. I gasped for breath, fighting down the nausea, pushing his hand away stubbornly. I'm not that fragile. Ugh. Yan Jingyu patiently patted my back to soothe me. Just then, a subordinate came riding up to report. My lord, General Mu is bringing a unit of Lingnan soldiers. They're still on the way. Should we advance into Tongzhou first? Yan Jingyu glanced down at my ashen face. After a long silence, he finally looked up and said coldly, hold steady. We wait. I slumped against Yan Jingyu's chest, eyes closed in exhaustion. Suddenly, I felt a tug at the hem of my skirt. I looked down. A child, not even as tall as a pony, stood there. Ragged skin stretched tight over protruding ribs, his little hands covered in blood and mud, gripping my clothes tightly. Please, ma'am, he croaked, something to eat. Yan Jingyu's arms tightened protectively around me. I lifted my head to look at him and realized he was nervous. He thought I might lash out and hurt the child. A weight sank in my heart. Was that how little he trusted me? Did he really think I couldn't tell right from wrong? I sniffled, softening my voice. Sister has water and food here. Let go of my skirt and I'll go get it for you, alright? Yan Jingyu stiffened, then slowly released me. Without looking at him, I went to the carriage, retrieved a few pieces of dried rations, wrapped them carefully in a cloth, and handed them to the boy. I crouched down and whispered, "Listen carefully. Don't tell anyone it was me who gave this to you, or they'll all come to steal it, and sister won't have any more." The child, wiser than his years, knelt formally and kowtowed before scampering off with the food. I stood there staring blankly at the mud-stained hem of my skirt, my heart heavy with unspeakable sorrow. Father had already crouched down on the side of the dirt road, head hanging low, without saying a word. "Jean." Yan Jingyu called softly behind me. I turned abruptly, climbed into the carriage, and yanked the curtain down with a sharp snap, cutting off his line of sight. I was angry, really angry. Angry that he had misunderstood me, distrusted me, always thought the worst of me. Yan Jingyu didn't call me again. He just stood outside quietly for a long time. Later, I heard low murmurs. It seemed General Mu had arrived, and then the carriage started moving. Just as we entered Tongzhou, General Mu stormed straight into the brothel and dragged the still sleeping magistrate out by the collar. The magistrate was a skinny man, so thin he would have blended in with the starving refugees if you tossed him among them. But I knew better. His frailty was just a facade. Your servant Zong Bagua pays respects to His Majesty," he babbled in terror, hands tied behind his back. "I deserve death 1,000 times over for failing to recognize Your Majesty." Father's face was like ice. He grabbed an inkstone and hurled it straight at Zong Bagua's head. "You do deserve death." Father roared. "I'm not just being polite. I'm serious. Today, I'm cutting off your head." Blood gushed from the wound as Zong Bagua sobbed pitifully. "It's not my fault. Wang Nian forced me to do it." Zong Bagua wasn't stupid. Sobbing and groveling, he pulled out every scrap of evidence showing Wang Nian's bribery and coercion. "He's protected by powerful men," he wept. "I had no choice. But at least I was smart enough to save the proof." "Smart, my ass," Father thundered, sending Zong Bagua into a coughing fit. Still on his knees, Zong Bagua whimpered. "I have evidence. The orders came from higher up." "Who exactly?" Father demanded darkly. I dare not say." Father stormed down the steps in 3 strides and kicked Zong Bagua in the shoulder. "You idiot! You're dead anyway. What are you scared of?" Zong Bagua rolled across the floor like a bundle of rags, then scrambled back on his knees. Tears streaming, he finally blurted, It was the princess." Silence. Dead silence. I stared blankly ahead, my mind empty. Maybe I threw up too much on the road and flushed out my brain. "Which princess?" I croaked out faintly. Zong Bagua didn't know who I was. He could only stare at me in despair. In this dynasty, there's only one princess.
Me.
I'll be damned. I stormed down the hall, stomping up to Father's side, and kicked Zong Bagua hard in the other shoulder. The magistrate rolled away again like a sack of flour. "Open your dog eyes and tell me, when did I ever order you to embezzle disaster relief funds?" Horrified, Zong Bagua started sobbing harder. "Please, Your Majesty, Your Highness, spare me. If this is a domestic dispute, the princess can just pay back the money, and we'll call it even." "Pay back what?" I grabbed him by the collar, furious beyond words. How did I suddenly end up owing a huge debt? Jean. Yan Jingyu pulled me into his arms, trying to calm me. "I did nothing wrong." I shoved him away angrily. "Why should I leave?" Father pressed his fingers against his forehead, exhaustion written all over his face. "I don't believe for a second," he said, "that Jean would ever do something like this." Because Father knew, most of the silver in the disaster relief fund had come from me. I had personally handed it to him. Only he knew the truth. But sometimes, goodwill and hard evidence were two completely different things. The men sent to investigate the Zhong family estate returned in a rush, handing over several ledgers and whispering something urgently into Father's and Yan Jingyu's ears. Both men turned their gazes toward me, their expressions complicated. I felt like a cat with its fur bristling, ready to bite at anyone. What now? Father stayed silent for a long while before he finally said, voice heavy. Jean, there's a letter inside, bearing your handwriting. The ledgers, they're real too. In front of so many people, even Father couldn't openly defend me against such ironclad evidence. My face went white as I stumbled back 2 steps. I understood. I had been framed. Yan Jingyu walked toward me, wanting to hold me. I stepped back and stared straight at him. Yan Jingyu, I said coldly, I didn't do it. Jean, he said softly, go back first. Leave this to me. A chill seeped into my heart. You don't believe me, I said lightly. Jean, please just listen. Yan Jingyu took another step forward, reaching out. I slapped his hand away with all my strength. A red mark immediately bloomed across his pale knuckles. Don't touch me. I was trembling all over, forcing out each word. Yan Jingyu, look into my eyes and tell me. You don't believe me, do you? Yan Jingyu's clear eyes looked into mine. A faint redness rimmed them, and then he slowly closed his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was cold and heavy. Guards. Fully armored soldiers instantly surrounded the entire yamen, the glint of their blades stabbing my eyes. Yan Jingyu was taking action. Take Zhong Beiguo away. Execute him at a later date, Yan Jingyu ordered, his tone frosty. Without even sparing me a glance, he saluted General Mu. Her Highness is unwell. Please see her safely back to the post house. He wasn't imprisoning me yet, but it was as good as house arrest. Even Father said nothing to stop him. My heart slowly sank. A bitter cold rose from the pit of my stomach and spread, slicing my heart into countless pieces. Yan Jingyu understood me better than anyone. He knew that as long as it wasn't him personally escorting me away, I wouldn't fight it. General Mu, thick-browed and honest-looking, came forward.
I didn't resist.
I simply turned and followed him out. I just wanted to get away. Away from Yan Jingyu's wavering gaze, away from the terror that he might truly imprison me, away from the nightmare that he might someday draft an indictment against me as ruthlessly as he had crushed the Pingnan Marquis case. Outside the Yamen, the streets were packed with kneeling commoners, all yellow-faced and thin, their clothes tattered. They had heard the emperor was here, and no amount of yelling from the officials could drive them away. Heaven above, please listen to the cries of your people. The princess has committed wicked deeds. She exploits the people. Please save us. I froze, then lifted my head sharply, staring at the gates, packed to bursting with angry bodies. My legs felt like they were weighed down with lead. I clenched my fists so hard my nails bit into my palms. A woman nursing a baby knelt on the ground, weeping. Please, Your Majesty, spare Magistrate Zhong. He's a good official. He's being wronged by the princess. I heard the princess lives in luxury and waste, while the people starve and die. She's a scourge upon the land, unfit to live. The law is equal for all. She must be executed. The crowd's anger rose in a wave. Execute the princess. Execute the princess. Their words, their glares, their hatred, it was like knives being thrust into my body. Enough. Enough. Please, no more. The damp, bone-chilling air of Tongzhou seeped into my skin. I swallowed hard, my nose stinging. Suddenly, I found myself longing for the sweet taste of the little Su cakes in the capital, the plum blossom pastries, the donpa pork, the squirrel-shaped sweet and sour fish. What had I done? I had traded my own comfort, scrimped and saved silver for disaster relief, and yet the people still wanted my head. I had made a complete mess of my life. Miss, General Mu said behind me, deliberately avoiding calling me princess. There's a side gate we can use. The people have been misled by rumors. Don't take their words to heart. His kindness made my throat tighten. Thank you, I rasped. The wind bit at my face. I wiped my cheeks, but I couldn't wipe away the dampness. Let's go. I hadn't eaten all day. The journey back to the post house was jarring and rough. When we finally arrived, I promptly threw up again. Bitter, sour while burning my throat. General Mu had arranged for a few quick-handed local maids to attend me, but I refused them all. I just wanted to be alone. The day darkened. In the dim room, the shapes of tables and chairs blurred. I didn't light a lamp. I didn't call for hot water. I simply curled up on the bed, hugging my knees. Ah chung. A shadow appeared silently outside the door, waiting for my command. I closed my eyes, sighing. Go check the accounts of the thief. It must have been that shipment last winter, the batch that went missing en route to the capital. Back then, I had been desperate for funds. I had sent a convoy, only for it to vanish, along with my official letter of seal. Ah Chung answered steadily. Subordinate cannot leave your side. Go, Ah Chung, I said hoarsely. If my name cannot be cleared, then I won't live long anyway. Embezzlement of disaster relief funds was a capital crime. If I couldn't clear my name, death awaited me. I had always lived unafraid of public scorn. The slander and curses from the people of the capital never once pierced my skin. But this time it was different. If no one believed me, if no one defended me, then I had to prove my innocence myself. I pulled the blanket over my head and finally, helplessly, cried. The night in Tongzhou stretched on endlessly. I wept until sleep finally took me. When I woke the next morning, the doors and windows were tightly shut. The house was eerily quiet. It didn't seem like anyone had come inside. In the mirror, my reflection stared back like a ghost climbing out of the grave. Pale, lips cracked, hair a tangled mess, spiritless and haggard. Nothing like a princess. Love really was a cruel, cruel thing. Outside, the sound of quick, light footsteps approached. The young maid paused at the door. Miss, are you awake? I grunted in response, and the girl pushed open the door. She was 15 or 16, with a sweet, innocent face. The moment she entered, her mouth started running. It snowed last night. Master had me bring you an extra quilt, and so much delicious food. I've never even seen pastries this fine before. The girl's family was dirt poor. Now, working under me, she had warm clothes and full meals. Of course she was happy. I lowered my head and noticed the thick cotton quilt newly draped over me. The table was neatly arranged with exquisite pastries, rich and fragrant. I couldn't help but think of General Mu's honest, clumsy-looking face. For him to have thought of all these little details, it must have been hard for him too. Are there still people making trouble at the yamen? I bit my lip and asked. The young maid glanced eagerly at the pastries on the table, swallowed hard, and said, The officials have already driven them away. They left willingly? I asked. The girl shook her head. They didn't want to, but someone said a certain official came out with a sword and killed the loudest troublemaker right there. Everyone else got scared and finally dispersed. She shivered. Second sister-in-law from the Wang family said that man looked like a god of death, covered in blood, and just one glare from him made your legs go soft. I stuffed a pastry into my mouth, then gave the maid one as well, chewing slowly. I didn't ask what that god of death looked like. I didn't want to know. Someone knocked at the door again. When I opened it, I found Shu Ji peeking nervously inside. The moment she saw my ghastly face, she flinched. Are you all right? Shu Ji asked hesitantly. I saw you all going to the yamen yesterday, and you tied up that rotten official. Are you officials from the capital? She had only glimpsed the scene before being sent back to the post house by General Mu's men. I neither confirmed nor denied it, merely inviting her inside for some pastries. Shu Ji waved her hands, stammering. I just came to tell you. Yesterday, when we entered the city, I think I saw one of Wang Yan's men, and I think he saw me too. She twisted the handkerchief in her hands until it was a crumpled ball. Do you think Wang Yan will come after us? I looked out at the afternoon sun sinking in the sky and immediately went to find General Mu. But his subordinates told me that trouble had broken out among the refugees in the south of the city, and General Mu had personally led his men there. Only a few skilled guards remained to protect the post house. Anxiety gnawed at me. I sent a young boy to deliver a message to the yamen. And then I waited. Night fell. I lit a lamp, curled up on the bed, clutching a blanket, unable to sleep. Restless, my mind kept racing. Had Yan Jingyu not received my message? Or had he received it and simply didn't care? Or were they now trapped at the yamen, overwhelmed by rioting refugees? The more I thought, the more unsettled I became. Shortly after the hour of the pig, a faint click echoed from the window. It sounded soft, but it pierced my nerves like a knife. I turned sharply. The window cracked open, and through the narrow gap, a pair of sinister, gleaming eyes stared straight at me. As the gap widened, a wide grin stretched all the way to the ears. A rough, unmistakable voice laughed low. "Your Highness is touring incognito. How could you not inform your humble servant?" My heart plummeted. He knew. I threw off the blanket and bolted for the door. There's a thief. My legs, cramped from a day's crouching, gave way. I stumbled at the threshold, crawling desperately. A coarse, powerful hand clamped around my ankle and yanked me backward. "Help! Help!" My cry was cut off. Wang Nian covered my mouth, his foul breath suffocating me. "Your Highness," he crooned. "Why so harsh? It's such a nice quiet night. No need to wake the neighbors." Footsteps pounded outside. I turned my eyes desperately toward the door, seeing a sea of dark figures gathering. I bit down hard on Wang Nian's fingers. Blood flooded my mouth, mixed with his rancid stench. With a howl, he jerked his hand away, flinging me into the window frame. Pain shot through my arm. "You damn bitch. Don't know what's good for you," Wang Nian roared. I spat out the bloody flesh I'd torn off and hissed, "There are people outside. You can't get away." Wang Nian's furious snarl melted into a twisted smile. "Oh, there are people, all right. But it's not me who can't escape. Your Highness, it's you." A crowd of brutish thugs stormed into the room, reeking of violence and malice. Their greasy eyes roamed over me, gleaming with a mixture of greed and lust. "Boss, we killed all the others." One of them leered. "Just 2 women left and a little maid. How do we split 'em?" The room erupted into raucous laughter. My heart plunged to rock bottom. Yan Jingyu hadn't received the message. Wang Nian licked the blood off his fingers, his mouth a grotesque mess.
He pointed at me.
"Keep her alive. She's still useful. The others? Do whatever you like." "But boss," one thug grumbled. "She's the princess, so soft, so pretty. None of us have ever." "Get lost," Wang Nian cursed, spitting filth. "When I put on the yellow robe, there'll be women lining up to throw themselves at me. For now, just pick that little one next door." I struggled to my feet, throwing a pillow at him. "Scum. If you have a grudge, take it out on me. Leave the children alone." Wang Nian knocked the pillow aside easily. He crouched down in front of me. Well, well. Our dear princess cares about the people after all." Every word he spoke was met with ugly laughter. "Don't worry," he sneered. "Your dear husband and father are busy being dragged around. They won't be coming anytime soon. We've got all the time in the world." His words struck me like a hammer. Wang Nian grinned wide enough to show the rotting debris between his teeth. "Your Highness," he said, "your thoughts are written all over your face." He chuckled darkly. "But it's too late. I already made preparations. Did you really think 200 men could stop me?" A chill clawed at my spine. You stockpiled troops." Wang Nian laughed with genuine appreciation. "Smart girl. That's right. I've got soldiers, and I've got a city full of starving refugees. Neither your father nor your precious husband will leave here alive." In a burst of fury, I rammed my head into Wang Nian's ribs. Caught off guard, he fell backward, flailing like an overturned turtle. "Treason," I spat through gritted teeth. "You're dead." Wang Nian's face twisted into something monstrous. Embarrassed by the laughter of his men, he scrambled to his feet and slapped me hard across the face. Grabbing a fistful of my hair, he yanked me up roughly. "You think you're noble?" he snarled. "I was gonna be nice, but you just had to pick the hard way." Saying that, he dragged me by my hair toward the bed. I gripped his wrist tightly, panting heavily, almost begging. "One last question, just one. Let me die knowing the truth." I was stalling for time, betting everything on my father and Yan Jingyu arriving in time to save me. Wang Nian, certain I couldn't escape, sneered, "Ask. Where did you get my handwritten letter?" Wang Nian let out a cold laugh. "Last winter, a merchant came to Juzhou. I invited him for drinks. He got drunk and started bragging, slipped up. At first, I didn't believe him either. But when we took care of him and searched him, we found the token. It matched." He grinned smugly. "Turns out, the higher-ups immediately pointed to you. Said when the time came for rebellion, flying your flag would make everything legitimate. My man had someone forge the accounts, imitate your handwriting. If that sniveling rat Zhong Beigua hadn't messed up, I'd still be lying at home listening to tunes. Damn bad luck." I squeezed out a few words with all my remaining strength. "Scum cursing scum, dog biting dog." Wang Nian laughed darkly. "Dead either way. Might as well strike first." He leaned closer, his breath rancid. "After I become emperor, I'll make you a consort. Imagine, a princess turned empress. How fitting, eh?" I glared at him viciously.
Spit.
"You think you're worthy?" Outside the post house, noise suddenly erupted. I laughed through my pain. Wang Nian heard it too. The thug guarding the door burst in, panic-stricken. "Boss, they've broken in." Wang Nian roared. "Impossible. They've only got 200 men. Capture the old emperor and Yan Jingyu, and the rest will crumble." The thug was frantic, nearly pissing himself. That's the problem, boss. It's Yan Jingyu. He's gone mad. Killing like a demon. No one can stop him." "Bullshit. A damn scholar?" Wang Nian bellowed. "If you keep spouting nonsense, I'll kill you first." But the man, shaking, had already pissed himself. "I saw it, boss. 10 steps. Corpses everywhere. He's slaughtering our men like chopping vegetables. We're doomed. You touched his woman, you're dead." With a snarl, Wang Nian flicked a dagger from under his arm. It hit the thug square between the brows. Turning, he grabbed my throat, crazed. "You're his precious thing. If I hold you hostage, even he will have to kneel." Knowing he had lost, Wang Nian tore at my clothes with one hand, fumbling with his belt with the other. "Fuck it. I'll have you right in front of him. Let's see how he bears it." His breath reeked of rot and filth. I gagged violently, vomiting all over him. Enraged, he slapped me hard. I fought back with everything I had, but he pinned me down easily. Fear finally broke free from my chest. I cried and struggled wildly. "Yan Jingyu, where the hell are you? Whoa, if you don't come, I'll smash my head against the bed and die."
Boom.
The door and a whole section of the wall shattered. Wang Nian's huge body froze. His arms buckled, and he collapsed onto me, mouth gaping in shock. Warm blood splashed over me. I looked down. A sword pierced straight through his chest, dripping blood onto my torn clothes, staining my skin red. Someone wrenched Wang Nian off me roughly. Bright light flooded the room. I squeezed my eyes shut. Through the blur, I caught a tall, familiar silhouette. A warm, blood-slick hand gently covered my eyes. The thick metallic scent overwhelmed my senses. "Jean, Yan Jingyu's voice trembled. Close your eyes, don't look." I couldn't speak. Wrapped in darkness, I shivered uncontrollably. Yan Jingyu wasn't doing much better. The hand covering my eyes shook. The arms around me shook. His whole body shook. Even his voice, whispering brokenly against my forehead, trembled. Jean, cry, please. I'm here, don't be afraid." A sob finally broke from my throat, followed by another. And then, wrenching, gutting, desperate wails. I'm sorry. Yan Jingyu crushed me against his chest, murmuring over and over, as if the words could undo everything. I couldn't see him clearly. I only felt the sticky warmth of blood soaking through his robes. Why did you come so late? I sobbed hysterically. Tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. You don't want me anymore. You don't want me anymore. I want you, Jean. Yan Jingyu whispered hoarsely. I want you. I almost died. I hiccuped through my tears. If you hadn't come, I would have smashed my head against the bed. I'd rather die than let Wang Nian touch me. Yan Jingyu rocked me gently, stroking my back again and again. The one who should die is him, never you. He wanted to rebel. I pushed him away, eyes swollen and red. He had soldiers, he has allies in the capital, he framed me. Seeing him up close, I sucked in a breath. Yan Jingyu looked awful. His face was pale under the blood splatters. His robes were shredded, his chest bare and crisscrossed with deep gashes, some so deep the bone gleamed white. His arms were covered in fresh wounds. Behind him, Wang Nian's corpse lay sprawled, eyes wide open in death. Beyond the ruined windows, the post house erupted with the clash of weapons and cries of battle. Father had begun rounding up the traitors. Yan Jingyu shifted, blocking the grisly scene from my view. Embarrassed by his wrecked state, he fidgeted awkwardly. I bit my lip, tears blurring my vision, unable to stop the sobs shaking my chest. Jean. His voice was raw. We found out. It was the Pingnan Marquis family who forged the accounts. His voice cracked, exhaustion bleeding through every word. You hit him. He held a grudge. He became Wang Nian's backer, plotted rebellion. It's all been uncovered. Jean, you're innocent, you're innocent. He kept repeating it like a prayer, as if to redeem himself. I reached out and gently wiped the blood from his face. I didn't care who framed me. I didn't care who hated me. I only cared about Yan Jingyu. Where have you been these past few days? I asked in a whisper. Investigating, he said, voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me? Yan Jingyu fell silent. I summoned all my courage to say the words that had been weighing on my heart. Yan Jingyu, when we return to the capital, I'll let you go. It was always like this. Yan Jingyu never said what he truly thought. He bottled everything up until he handed me only the final result. I was a princess, born proud and stubborn, too proud to ask for anything. Our flaws were so painfully obvious, yet so hard to bridge. As long as this deadlock remained, endless misunderstandings would inevitably wait for us ahead. We were destined to struggle, destined to falter. Better to part ways. He wouldn't have to worry about me anymore, wouldn't have to exhaust himself for my sake, wouldn't have to be weighed down by me. He could hide his ambitions away, safe and intact. And I wouldn't have to live each day in constant fear and uncertainty, racking my brain for ways to prove that he loved me. The light in Yan Jingyu's eyes dimmed, inch by inch. His lips trembled, parted slightly, but in the end, he said nothing. After a long moment, he picked me up, carried me to another room, carefully washed me clean with hot water, washed himself, and then tucked me into the blankets. I turned to face the wall, refusing to look at him. My eyes grew red. I heard him crouch by the bed for a long time, then get up. The door opened softly and closed. Tears streamed uncontrollably down my face, soaking the freshly changed bedding. He left, not even bothering to say a single word to stop me. Maybe there wasn't much feeling between us to begin with. I whimpered quietly, and suddenly a sigh came from the doorway. So far away, yet unmistakably his. Jean. Yan Jingyu's voice was low and desolate. Before I go, there are some things I have to say. If I don't say them now, I might never get the chance again. I stayed still, listening silently. We grew up together. You always acted on impulse, temperamental and dazzling, like a precious flower raised in golden sunlight. I never once imagined that one day you would be willing to ruin your reputation just to stand up for me. Jean, both by duty and by feeling, I owe you. But the Yen family is barren soil. Beneath it lies nothing but cold, unchanging stillness. I wasn't sure if dragging you into it would let you survive. He paused, his voice hoarse. I thought if you never married, I would come for you eventually. Even so, when His Majesty mentioned a marriage decree, I agreed instantly, without hesitation. A storm churned in my heart. So it hadn't been one-sided. If Yan Jingyu hadn't agreed, there would have been no marriage. All along, he had been willing. When had he started? When had he opened his heart to me? Chosen me? I didn't know. I only knew that the sour bitterness in my chest was slowly replaced by something sweeter, lighter. Like when you fall in love with someone and suddenly realize they have loved you too for a very long time. Yan Jingyu's voice continued, trembling faintly. The Yen family is a stagnant pond. And so am I. I have too many burdens, and I've long been used to carrying them silently. When you misunderstood me, I thought one day you'd come to understand.
But now,
I'm afraid. I couldn't endure it again. He gave a bitter laugh. When they brought out the evidence, I panicked. Even though deep down I knew 1,000 times over that you weren't guilty, my first instinct was to think of how to wipe your name clean, how to cover it up. Jean, in the history of the world, how many cases have ever been truly, wholly cleared? I was afraid greedy men would push you to the front as their scapegoat. Sometimes, hiding the truth is easier than fighting for it. I am no longer that upright, incorruptible man. I have selfishness now, and I would gladly abandon all fairness, all principles, just for you. I was lost in agony. I seized the evidence through my rank. I even thought of selling everything I had to fill the missing silver. I was so selfish, so hypocritical, terrified of seeing disappointment in your eyes, terrified of you walking away from me. For the first time in my life, I tasted the gut-wrenching pain of loving someone. But luckily, there were still traces to follow. Aching had succeeded. Yan Jingyu had succeeded. They had clawed their way through faint, almost invisible clues, and found the trail of the missing goods from last winter. His voice trembled. Jean, do you know how scared I was when I heard you shouting for me at the post house? Your body, so small, so delicate, one light pinch would leave a bruise for days, and yet Wang Nian. His voice cracked. He paused to regain his composure before continuing. I realized then that I can never live without you. If anything happened to you, I would completely lose my mind. He took slow, cautious steps toward me, knelt behind me, and carefully, cautiously, hugged me from behind, as if afraid I might pull away again. Jean, please don't leave me, please. Yan Jingyu cried. Though he didn't let me see it, I knew. Tears streamed silently down my face. Still facing away, I mumbled, You're so stupid. If I died, wouldn't that just free you to become a general? Yan Jingyu buried his face against my nape, his lashes wet, silent. I turned around and hugged him, stroking his hair as if soothing a big wounded wolf dog. He was scared too. My heart melted into a complete, helpless puddle. I patted his back and whispered, Go ahead and cry. I cried too. It's nothing to be ashamed of. Yan Jingyu was willing to risk death for me, to falsify accounts, to commit treason in my name. What right did I have to begrudge him anything? He tightened his arms around my waist and sighed. Jean, you really have me wrapped around your finger. I giggled through my tears, wiping my nose noisily. I had you wrapped around my finger since I was 3. You just wouldn't admit it. The long night in Tongzhou finally passed, amid the screams and clashing steel. Far away, the sky broke open, pale light cracking through the dark clouds. The snow that had fallen all night finally stopped. The post house was silent. No one came to disturb us. Yan Jingyu lay on the outside of the bed. I nestled in his arms, carefully peeling back his clothing to blow gently on his wounds. Does it hurt? I asked softly. He shook his head, voice dry and hoarse. It doesn't hurt when you're the one blowing on it. He had traveled endlessly, fought a brutal battle, exhausted himself. Finally, he could stop, even if just for a moment. He didn't talk much. Just watched me quietly, answering only when I asked. Gone was the sharp-tongued, fearless man from court. My eyes stung with unshed tears as I carefully applied ointment to his wounds, grumbling under my breath. You're a civil official, always fighting and killing, so improper. In the past, I didn't know how many times he had scolded me like this. Now that I threw it back at him, Yan Jingyu merely looked at me gently and said, "Your Highness is right to chastise me." That sounded truly sweet to my ears. I started telling him about what had happened at the post house, praising the little maid's cleverness and how I wanted to bring her back to the capital. Yan Jingyu just listened quietly, occasionally responding with a few mild words. It wasn't until I sighed, lamenting that I'd have to trouble the little maid to wash the bedding again, that his face suddenly darkened. "That bedding was touched by Wang Nian," he said coldly. "Throw it out. Traveling outside the palace had taught me frugality." I protested. "But it's General Mu's thoughtful gesture. It wouldn't be proper to throw it away." At first, Yan Jingyu didn't understand. Then something clicked, and his face froze stiffly. "You thought it was from Mu General?" I blinked. The little maid said, then abruptly stopped. At that time, the maid had only said it was sent by the young master, and I had simply assumed it was General Mu. Looking at Yan Jingyu's now sky-high vinegar jar expression, realization finally struck me. This guy had worried about me, afraid I would refuse if I knew it was from him. So he'd secretly sneaked over in the night to deliver himself. The little maid didn't recognize him. Every young master looked the same to her. Grinning from ear to ear, I tilted my head up and planted a kiss on the jealous man. We hadn't seen each other for days. Now that all the knots between us had unraveled, our rekindled affection burned fiercely. My cheeks flushed as I was about to speak, when suddenly, the strong scent of the new bedding detergent filled my nose, making me feel a bit nauseous. I frowned. Yan Jingyu noticed something was wrong and grew anxious. "What's wrong?" I waved my hand to reassure him, then propped myself up and leaned over the side of the bed, and promptly vomited. Yan Jingyu was so startled he nearly fell off the bed. Before dawn, he rushed to fetch a doctor. The elderly physician placed a hand on my wrist, his brows smoothing out as a knowing smile tugged at his lips. Stroking his goat-like beard, he drawled, "This old man cannot cure such an illness. Best prepare for a joyous occasion." The way he spoke, all dramatic pauses, nearly scared me into thinking it was time to prepare for my funeral. Yan Jingyu's face turned deathly pale. Even after the doctor finished speaking, he stood there frozen, completely blank. His brilliant mind, usually adept at every court intrigue, had clearly crashed. Anxiously, he blurted out, "Who else can treat it?" The old doctor shook his head and chuckled. "This illness will heal itself in about 9 months." Yan Jingyu looked as though he'd been struck by lightning. It took a long moment for him to process what he had just heard. When he finally understood, his dark eyes lit up, shimmering like stars. Slowly, hesitantly, he turned to me. Jean, you?" Gone was the usual solemn, disciplined Yan Jingyu. A shy, uncontrollable smile spread across his face as he dazedly stumbled forward, wanting to touch me, but not daring to. I gave him a playful kick, my own lips curling uncontrollably into a smile. "It's all your fault," I said. "Now the child has to be bumped and jostled all the way back to the capital." Yan Jingyu gently lifted my foot and tucked it carefully under the covers. Then he sat by the bed, wrapping me in a cautious, protective embrace, as if I were something impossibly fragile. "My fault, all my fault," he muttered incoherently. "I almost made a terrible mistake." I. Seeing him flustered like that, I couldn't help but laugh. I grabbed his face and gave him a noisy kiss. "Yan Jingyu. I'm a mother now, and you," I said smugly, "you'll have to spoil me even more from now on." "All right." "Yan Jingyu, doesn't your face hurt?" "Why do you ask?" "Think back. What did you say the first time you met me?" "Not everyone must indulge you." "Wasn't I right?" he replied calmly. "Not everyone, but from now on I will." "Yan Jingyu, you're twisting words. Your humble servant dares not." Extra chapter. When Wang Nian's mansion was ransacked, more than 20 golden chamber pots were found in his sleeping quarters. Furious, The emperor kicked over a table on the spot and ordered Wang Nian's corpse to be hung from the city walls of Suzhou, facing Tongzhou, for a full month. Since Xu Ji had served as a witness, she would also return to the capital with us. I rarely saw my father looking this serious in private. Dressed in a bright yellow dragon robe, his face taut, he sat solemnly in the magistrate's main seat, stroking his sparse beard with an air of true imperial authority. When Xu Ji was brought in, she was so startled she nearly tripped. "Why, Yellow Lord?" General Mu, standing at the side, chimed in at just the right moment, cupping his hands at ear level and bowing solemnly. "Insolence! You stand before His Majesty the Emperor. Kneel at once." With a loud thud, Xu Ji dropped to her knees. "Long live your Majesty, 10,000 years." Father coughed lightly, trying to suppress the proud smile threatening to climb up his face. "Ahem. We have heard of Wang Nian's many vile deeds, and thus came to Suzhou in disguise. Now that justice has been served, you will return to the capital to testify. Considering your troubled past and your meritorious service in exposing wrongdoing, we shall allow you to settle in the capital thereafter." I was getting sleepy listening to him and, half-dazed, leaned closer to Yan Jingyu and whispered, "Lord Censor, how many times has father said we now? Does he really have to hammer in his identity like that?" Father was truly too childish sometimes. Yan Jingyu let me rest against his shoulder, answering softly, "That was the third time. His Majesty seems rather pleased with himself. If this continues, he won't stop until he's spoken for a whole tea's time. If you're sleepy, I'll take you back." My head drooped against his chest. Isn't this sort of nonsense part of a censor's duty to correct? Yan Jingyu lifted my chin, gazing into my half-closed eyes. "Not when it comes to one's own lady." At that, my sleepiness vanished instantly. I sat up and said eagerly, "I want I sorbet." Yan Jingyu locked eyes with me for a long time before finally saying slowly, "As for my own lady's business, I can interfere." "No." I pouted. Who knew how many times I had pleaded for sorbet now? But Yan Jingyu kept a tight watch, forbidding even a single bite. Pointing pitifully to my stomach, I whispered, "It's not me who wants it, it's him." Yan Jingyu remained unmoved. A filial child must care for their mother. If it's harmful to you, even if he's craving it, he'll have to endure. I was left speechless, sighing dramatically. My child, after your mother suffers your father's torment, someday it will be your turn to deal with him." The craving only grew stronger. I fidgeted restlessly in Yan Jingyu's arms, unable to find a comfortable position. Yan Jingyu looked down, sighed. "My ancestor, could you please calm down? Even soaking in cold water every day, I won't be able to bear this much longer." Startled, I buried my burning red face in the crook of his neck, terrified someone would see how crimson I'd become. After what happened with Wang Nian, this pregnancy had been unstable from the start. Of the two of us, it was Yan Jingyu who had borne the worst of the hardship. I curved my lips into a small smile, then hugged his arm tightly and asked, my eyes glistening, "Lord Censor, what if it's a girl?" Caught off guard, Yan Jingyu actually grew serious, pondering deeply. Seeing an opening, I quickly added, "The little girl in my belly said she only wants one bite. Will Daddy agree?" Yan Jingyu cleared his throat, turned his face away, and after a long moment muttered, "Just one bite, then." From that moment on, I began fervently hoping the baby would be a girl. On the way back to the capital, Father seemed to have shed all his earlier gloom, constantly pulling Xu Ji over to chatter away. "We once had a palace maid pushed into a well and drowned," he said animatedly. "Another was poisoned. Her whole body turned blue when they found her. You're so naive. If you'd gone in, you'd be dead within a month. Tell me, am I right or am I right?" Xu Ji, teary-eyed, nodded like a pecking chicken. "Your Majesty speaks the truth. You even accused me of bragging." Father barked. "I only speak facts. And my apologies, Your Majesty. I was blind to greatness." Eventually, Father nagged so much that Xu Ji, desperate beyond words, grabbed his leg and cried, Please, your majesty, throw me in jail instead. I beg for the punishment under the law. When we finally returned to the capital, we received unexpected news. Old censor Yen had returned too. After our wedding, I'd always been uncomfortable facing that stern, solemn old man, and after falling out with Yen Jingyu, I had never visited again. Now that we had good news to share, it was time to pay a visit. The second day after returning to the capital, Yen Jingyu and I went to the Yen estate. At the time, I wasn't showing yet. I sat beside Yen Jingyu, head bowed low, too scared to even glance at the elder. What did you say? The old man asked sharply. Yen Jingyu, sitting up straight, replied in a steady voice. Zhan is with child. The old master glanced at me sternly, then turned to Yen Jingyu and said gravely, Follow me to the ancestral hall. To me, he was slightly gentler. Princess, eat your meal. I have a few words to say to Jingyu. I anxiously glanced at Yen Jingyu. He served me some food and whispered, Be good. I'll be back soon. I knew ordinary days didn't merit a visit to the ancestral hall. Unless a grave mistake had been made, going there was never good news. Heart-pounding, I asked a maid for directions and hurried after them. Outside the ancestral hall, I stopped in my tracks. Inside, Yen Jingyu was kneeling, back ramrod straight, before the furious old man. I was frozen, unable to advance, unable to retreat. Back then, I had insisted on marrying Yen Jingyu without seeking old censor Yan's approval.
It was no wonder he disliked me.
But why did he have to kneel? Extra chapter continued. Inside, I heard old Master Yen furiously berating him. You little scoundrel. The southern inspection was such a serious matter, and you couldn't even control yourself, letting the princess get pregnant on the road. Did you even think about whether such a delicate girl could handle it? A gentleman may have feelings, but must restrain them. Everything I taught you, did you feed it all to the dogs? Yen Jingyu lowered his head and answered. Father's reprimand is right. Your son knows his fault. The old man huffed. I heard the princess was held hostage in Tongzhou. She must have been terrified. Is she really all right now? I watched her barely eat anything at the banquet. You should pay more attention to her instead of constantly worrying about that decrepit emperor's endless problems. An old man like him still making his children and grandchildren clean up after him. Tui. Clearly, the old grudges between my father and old master Yen ran deep. Madam, you shouldn't stand out here. It's drafty. A Yen household servant whispered kindly to me. But both men inside had already heard. Awkward beyond belief, I shuffled one foot over the threshold and stood stiffly at the door, hands wringing, not daring to meet the old master's gaze. Old Master Yen coughed lightly and, his face stern, said, You may rise. Yen Jingyu thanked him, got up and walked over to me, taking my ice-cold hands into his. Weren't you supposed to be eating in the front hall? Why are your hands freezing from running around? Peeking nervously over his shoulder, I was afraid old Master Yen would punish him further. So I forced out my sweetest smile and said brightly, Father, I brought a few jars of plum wine. Would you like to try? The old man froze, clearly caught off guard. Well, I suppose I could have a taste. If I wasn't mistaken, I think he smiled. Good heavens, Yen Jingyu must have inherited 10 parts of his character from his father. Both only respond to kindness, never to force. Once I realized that, I handled the rest of the gathering with ease. I clung to him, sweetly calling Father, Father at every turn, until by the end, he was grinning from ear to ear, drunk and staggering out with the servants supporting him, still chuckling. Girl, you must come visit Father often. As for me, I couldn't drink a drop, so naturally, Yen Jingyu drank it all for me. Now tipsy, his eyes hazy and unfocused, he collapsed softly against my shoulder and mumbled, Zhan, I have never once regretted marrying you. Who would believe you? I poked at him, but couldn't budge him. You could have had a brilliant future if I hadn't dragged you down into being my consort. Yen Jingyu nuzzled my hair, his breath warm and tinged with wine as he whispered, I have no need to chase fame or fortune. What needs to be done, I can do behind the scenes just the same. Had he not been drunk, he would never have said such things aloud. In truth, I already vaguely understood. Father had been more than happy about our marriage. There were bigger things he needed Yan Jingyu to handle, but publicly, no one could give him official credit. With his identity, Yan Jingyu couldn't grasp power openly. And one day, when father was no longer on the throne and my brothers fought for succession, Yan Jingyu would be safely untouched by their strife. He would remain in peace, and so would I. Just look at how, after returning to the capital, Yan Jingyu ruthlessly impeached the Marquis of Pingnan, submitting memorial after memorial with chilling precision. It didn't take long before the traitorous Marquis was sentenced to death. Father had gained a loyal minister who would devote his life in silence. What a clever plan. Yan Jingyu said he didn't chase titles or glory. But the truth was he loved me. And for me, he had willingly given it all up. Seeing my foolish husband take such a huge loss without complaint, naturally, I wasn't going to let it slide. The next day, I stormed into the palace, ready to rob my father blind. Hand over the money. Noble consort Ro, passing by with a bowl of soup, bolted into the courtyard like a startled rabbit, claiming she needed to reheat it. Father shook his head like a rattledrum. No money. Not a single coin. I slammed my hand down on the table. You robbed my Yan Jingyu fair and square. Fine, we'll give up the official titles. But you have to pay up. A big reward, in silver. Father's beard trembled. Jean, he volunteered.
He's honest.
But am I? I planted one foot on the stool, arms akimbo. Do you have any idea how dangerous that southern tour was? Yan Jingyu's still covered in wounds. And you're telling me it was all voluntary? Have you no conscience? Father panicked, quickly pulling me into a chair. Jean, you're still pregnant. Don't get upset. Just then, a eunuch entered and whispered, Your Majesty, old Censor Yen and Censor Yen are waiting in the imperial study. Noble consort Ro chose that exact moment to reappear, briskly announcing, Quick, someone escort His Majesty to the study. His meal is finished. Then she slammed the door shut, locking both of us outside. Father. He paced like a trapped animal. Jean, can't you take Jingyu home first? Expressionless, I replied. Give me money. Father tugged at his graying hair pitifully. Jean, your old father, look how aged I've become. Save it. Pay up and I'll leave. Inside the study, another argument erupted, voices raised and furious. Old Censor Yen and my father bickered like two roosters in a pit. Yan Jingyu and I sat quietly nearby, sipping hot tea. We were both used to this sort of chaos. No need to intervene. You married my daughter just to sow chaos at home. Father roared, red-faced. Old Censor Yen bared his teeth. You miscalculated. Now she calls me father sweet as honey. She's better behaved than she ever was at your place. He turned, seeking my support. I cradled my tea and sweetly called out, Father. Old Censor Yen beamed.
Ah.
Father grit his teeth. And what about me? What about your real father? I turned back and called even sweeter. Father. Father instantly puffed up with pride. In the end, I walked away with double the red envelopes, one from each of them. And hand in hand with Yan Jingyu, we happily went home to start our new life. Extra chapter, male lead's perspective. When I was 10 years old, I met Songjian for the first time in the Imperial Garden. She was like a little ball of pink fluff, crying her eyes out over a rabbit. Because of her, the entire palace was thrown into chaos. She was a spoiled child, completely different from anyone I had ever encountered. When she spotted me, her tear-streaked eyes blinked, and she stretched out her hands toward me. Big brother, carry me. She seemed defenseless against everyone, and in this treacherous palace, I couldn't believe she would ever grow up safely. Before I realized it, my heart softened a little, but my mouth remained merciless. Stirring the palace into uproar over a rabbit, hardly the conduct befitting a princess of a nation. I reprimanded her with good intentions. But she didn't appreciate it. She kicked me. That little brat, completely unreasonable. I disdained getting into petty squabbles with a child. Yet somehow, she stuck to me after that. Every time I entered the palace with my father for court matters, I would run into her. She would always call out "hey" to me. When angry, she would shout my full name, Yan Jingyu. She found my constant adherence to rules unbearable and seemed determined to correct me by herself. But a child of the Yen family, burdened with heavy responsibilities since birth, had no time for childish games. She was a princess, after all, living off the people's taxes, yet sleeping soundly, without a care. The Yen family's reputation in the capital wasn't great, largely because my father was too upright. Out in public, I often faced contempt and mockery. When I was 14, I was cornered and beaten in an alley. My father forbade me from fighting back, demanding I uphold a gentleman's decorum. So even though I could have easily beaten those bullies senseless, I stood there and endured the abuse. That day, Song Jian happened to pass by the mouth of the alley. She glanced at me casually, and just as casually turned away. By then, she had grown into a striking young lady, the subject of countless young men's silent longing in the capital. But I knew she wasn't abandoning me. She was preserving my dignity. I thought the matter would end there. Until later, something huge shook the capital. Song Jian beat up the sons of several noble families so badly that physicians had to make house calls to reset broken bones. My heart jumped when I heard, because the very ones she attacked were the same brats who had cornered me. Not one was spared. Song Jian's reputation was ruined overnight. She became a fearsome figure everyone avoided. I later found her and asked why she had done it. She looked at me with disdain and said, "They annoyed me, so I beat them. Do I need a reason?" She was like a bristling little porcupine, bristling untamed. As I grew older and entered court service, those same young men never stopped trying to humiliate her in subtle, insidious ways. Though I dealt with some of them behind the scenes, Song Jian's blatant retaliation often escalated things to life-threatening levels. Truthfully, she didn't need to lift a hand. I could have handled it. Several times, I tried to persuade her to stop, only to be glared at coldly. "Yan Jingyu, what does this have to do with you?" She would smile sweetly when she said it. "The emperor has been worrying about your marriage for some time. Don't you care about your reputation?" I frowned, half angry, half helpless. She snorted and teased. "Then why don't you marry me?" Though she sounded like she was joking, my heart skipped a beat. We had grown up together. I knew her well. Headstrong, willful, impossible to reason with. She was like a brilliantly blooming flower, vivid, dazzling, but full of thorns. The Yen family was in fertile soil. If she married into it, I couldn't imagine how she would endure it. But I also knew she was fiercely loyal. Just as she said, only she could bully Yan Jingyu. No one else was allowed. I wanted to ask her what loyalty meant in her eyes. Family? Friendship? Or something deeper? So I told her, "Go ahead and try." I must have been insane. Song Jian was entirely incompatible with the Yen family. When His Majesty later proposed our marriage, I didn't refuse. At that moment, I only thought, since she had ruined her reputation defending me, it was only right that I marry her. But deep down, there was a fleeting, shameful joy. I had never approached women before. Those demure, noble girls who blushed and peeked at me only reminded me of my mother, a woman who lived a cautious, stifled life, slowly wasting away inside the Yen family. But Song Jian was different, vibrant, brilliant,
Alive.
When I provoked her again, she retaliated immediately, securing an imperial decree herself, proudly waving it in my face. "If you kowtow 3 times at my doorstep, I might consider sparing you," she said smugly. I didn't respond. In truth, I had already achieved my goal. Why regret it now? From the very beginning, I had already been scheming a little. On our wedding night, she started pushing my limits again. Outside the bridal chamber, I overheard her saying to her maids, "An engagement can be broken, a marriage can be annulled, and if worst comes to worst, divorce him." If Yan Jingyu treats me badly, I'll just leave. She was so pragmatic, so fearless. But how would she know unless she tried? I truly didn't know about the aphrodisiac His Majesty slipped into the wine. Egged on by Song Jian, I stumbled through a night of drunken passion and woke up drowning in guilt and regret. I realized then, my feelings toward her had never been just aversion. That drunken night shattered all the lies I had told myself for years. I had always yearned for brightness. And she was exactly that. Such selfish, dark little thoughts. I dared not let Song Jian know. Nor was I willing to let her go. Later, I discovered she was all tough words and soft heart. No matter how late I returned from court, she always left a light on for me. When I neglected her, she would sulk and complain. When we made peace, she was so enchanting I could hardly recognize myself. I was completely undone by her. A few times, when the emperor called me in court, I didn't even hear him. She even willingly followed me to the Yen family. I saw her sitting stiffly at the banquet, so awkward and out of place. And my heart ached with guilt and fear. I thought of my mother, living a life of cautious obedience until she withered away. Song Jian couldn't end up like that. I wanted her safe and well, back at the princess residence. The Yen family didn't deserve her suffering. When I spoke, I angered her, and she misunderstood. But I didn't explain myself right away. Later, I told myself, let it be. It wasn't a big deal. When Song Jian reappeared before me, lively and radiant as ever, only then did I finally breathe again. Extra chapter, male lead's perspective. Every time she came looking for me, my heart would inevitably be stirred by her. Later, when she beat up the young master of Pingnan Marquis household in the alley, I was furious and terrified. His Majesty had raised her so well, shielding her from all dangers. I, too, was carefully chosen to be her consort. But in that moment, I feared more than anything that I wouldn't be able to protect her. She had no idea who the Pingnan Marquis was, nor how much scheming and effort His Majesty had invested in trying to uproot that thorn. Yet she simply raised her fist and struck. I was angry at her recklessness and ignorance. But when she stood there, eyes red, telling me with tearful stubbornness that no one was allowed to bully me, my heart softened beyond reason. Truthfully, it wasn't her fault. It was enough that she cared about me. I told her there were other ways. The matter of dealing with the Pingnan Marquis. Leave it to me. Not long after, unrest stirred in several southern regions. The timing was right. His Majesty prepared for a southern inspection tour. I grew increasingly busy and eventually moved into the palace for convenience. She seemed upset that I was not at her side. One day, she showed up at court carrying a small jar brimming with walnuts she had cracked herself. I later tasted them, sweet and lingering. Before long, I had eaten the jar clean. Laughing at myself, I thought, better she stays safely in the capital. If I could return safely from the tour, I would tell her how I truly felt. I had lived a life of strict discipline. When it came to official duties, I was swift and decisive. But when it came to matters of the heart, I was hopelessly slow. Even saying, "I love you," felt impossibly difficult. I thought a period of distance would clear my mind. Following His Majesty south was the perfect opportunity. In collusion with His Majesty, we staged a ruse to deceive her, and almost succeeded. But when I heard her voice outside the city walls, I felt like a deserter caught mid-flight, forced at last to face my own heart. In love, all my self-restraint collapsed utterly. When she clung to me, soft and teary. When she pouted and glared, calling me Yan Jingyu. Every moment only made me find her more endearing. I loved teasing her, loved seeing her flustered and blushing because of me. I forgot my father's teachings. I lost myself completely in her tenderness. And eventually I thought, having a child with her would be wonderful. At least then, she would no longer dream of divorcing me. But later, I realized my feelings had long spiraled beyond my control. I had been an upright official for years, incorruptible, impartial, praised by all. But when Song Jian was in danger, all those virtues crumbled into dust. The case needed to be investigated, but I needed to protect Songjian even more, regardless of the outcome. I dared not gamble with His Majesty's favor. Songjian had accumulated public resentment. His Majesty was an emperor first and foremost. Who could guarantee he wouldn't sacrifice her to appease the people? Too many wrongful cases went unsolved, unclear, forgotten. I would not let Songjian become one of them. Outside the Yamen gates, I heard them shouting to execute the princess. Again and again, it was the same man stirring the crowd, disgusted beyond words. I drew my sword and killed him. It was the first time I ever abandoned justice. I killed without trial or questioning, simply because he threatened her. I acted alone, abused my authority to seize evidence. If silver was missing, I would fill the gap myself. No matter what, I would drag her out of that disaster, unscathed. Just like I told her. Sometimes, covering up is easier than clearing the truth. Later, the Pingnan Marquis household was implicated, and the deeper networks behind them, not something outsiders would ever fully understand. His Majesty sat at his desk, the flickering candlelight casting deep shadows across his face. He asked, "Yan Jingyu, do you acknowledge your guilt?" "Yes," I answered. "Then I will spare your life, so you may atone for it."
He continued,
"I want Songjian never to know the ugliness of this world. That is also this subject's wish," I said. It didn't matter who stood behind Pingnan Marquis. It didn't matter who dared frame her.
She need not know.
For the next few decades, His Majesty and I would take care of it piece by piece. When I received news that Wang Nian had gone to the post station, a chill of terror ripped through me. By the time I came to my senses, I was already standing in a sea of blood, corpses strewn at my feet. I heard her scream, desperate and broken, and I panicked. When I burst into the room, I saw Wang Nian, saw him laying filthy hands on her. I ran him through without hesitation, ripped him off her, and gathered my beloved into my arms. I was shaking violently. If she had been harmed, how would I live on? She said she wanted to leave me. There had been too many misunderstandings between us. From the smallest careless words to the gravest threats to her innocence, I owed her countless explanations. "I love you." Those 3 words felt far too thin and frail. So I spoke everything that had accumulated in my heart, poured out a lifetime's worth of tenderness and remorse. I think she understood. I, Yan Jingyu, love her deeply, fiercely, until the end of my days. When she let me hold her, when she wept in my arms, I too broke down in tears, relieved, overwhelmed, crushed by the unbearable fear of losing her. Heaven had not been unkind to me after all. We had a child on the way. I could hardly imagine it. A little girl, lively and charming like her mother, or a little boy, solemn and steady like me, but with her bright eyes. Either way, it didn't matter. In this life, the only one who could stand by Songjian's side was me. Postpartum extra chapter. Giving birth to the 2 little ones inside me took every ounce of strength I had. The midwife said I had a petite frame, and carrying rare twins made the labor no different from walking through the gates of hell. I was drenched in sweat from the pain, one wave after another tearing through my body, leaving me too exhausted even to cry. The midwife's face looked grim. "It's been so long, and we've only just seen the crown. Princess, you must push harder." I wanted to push harder. I gripped Yan Jingyu's arms so tightly that I clawed his skin bloody. His face was ashen, his hand deathly gripping mine, calling Zhan over and over. He hadn't expected that this pregnancy would bring not just 1, but 2. A boy and a girl. The midwife, holding the newborns, beamed as she congratulated us. "Princess consort, you are truly blessed. A dragon and phoenix pair." Yan Jingyu's face was so pale, it was frightening. Anyone who saw him would think he was the one who had given birth. I, weak and drained, still found the strength to grumble at him. Our esteemed censor is truly remarkable, accomplishing both a son and a daughter in one go. Yan Jingyu's voice trembled with lingering fear. "Zhan, no more. I won't let you go through this again. Seeing that neither of us was in the mood to respond, the midwife took the twins and hurried off to inform the emperor of the good news, leaving just the two of us in the room. You're good with words, I said. Think of some names for them. After a moment of thought, he said, Mingxian and Wanhua. One spirited, one serene. He probably hoped they would balance each other out. And in time, they truly lived up to his hopes, growing vibrantly. Yan Mingxian, our little son, became the most notorious troublemaker in the capital. People often whispered, how could the upright censor Yan raise such a rascal? Every day Mingxian would shout about upholding justice, only to be dragged home by his collar for a beating. Yan Wanwan, our daughter, became the perfect replica of her father. Serious, reserved, and famed across the capital as a cold beauty. One day, Minister Lu came to our home, dragging along his black-eyed son and furious wife. The moment I saw them, I knew it was Mingxuan's doing. I immediately sent someone to summon Yan Jingyu. Once the two boys were confronted, the truth came out. Young Master Lu had picked up some nasty habits recently, speaking disrespectfully to Wanwan. Mingxian, enraged, punched him square in the eye. Motherhood had mellowed my temper considerably. Seeing me soft-spoken, Madame Lu grew bolder and snapped. Even so, he shouldn't have hit someone. Minister Lu's beard puffed with indignation. Exactly. Mingxian, usually brash, shrank his neck and said nothing. Wanwan, on the other hand, wore a frosty expression just like her father. Unexpectedly, Yan Jingyu didn't punish Mingxian. Instead, he calmly said, Madame Lu, your words are mistaken. Did your son consider my daughter's feelings when he acted so shamelessly? I coldly huffed. As princess, I fully agree with the consort. Only then did Minister Lu realize he was arguing with imperial relatives. He immediately began to falter. But Madame Lu, too angry to think straight, shrieked. So, what if you're royalty? That doesn't mean you can act unreasonably. Wanwan suddenly stepped forward and faced Mingxian. Don't be afraid, sis. Mingxian said loyally. I'll stand up for you. Thud. Wanwan punched him in the other eye, leaving it bruised and swollen. Even I winced watching it. Yan Jingyu remained perfectly impassive. I strongly suspected he and Wanwan had planned this. Mingxian clutched his face and wailed, Sis, why did you hit me too? Wanwan turned calmly toward the Lu family, her face emotionless. Is that enough? Minister Lu, utterly embarrassed, quickly nodded. Enough, enough. Yan Jingyu then added, in that case, let's talk about your son's loose tongue. When it came to verbal duels, no one in court could defeat Yan Jingyu. It was my first time witnessing him using his full might to pressure someone, and I had to cover my mouth to stop myself from laughing uncontrollably. Minister Lu's face turned deathly pale. Ah, Your Excellency mustn't take it so seriously. Boys will be boys. By then, Mingxian had recovered, furious and stamping his foot. Just wait. Tomorrow I'll spread the glorious tale of your son's antics throughout the capital. In the end, Minister Lu and his wife, who had arrived righteously, left in utter humiliation. Mingxian, still sniffling, ran to me. Mother, it hurts, blow on it for me. Yan Jingyu finally ran out of patience. He grabbed Mingxian by the collar and tossed him out of the room. Go copy your glorious deeds 1,000 times, he ordered coldly. Understand their meaning before coming to see me again. Mingxian stared at him in disbelief. But father, I was being sarcastic. You even used that phrase yourself last month. Yan Jingyu ignored him and slammed the door shut. I laughed so hard I nearly couldn't breathe. Yan Jingyu came over and gathered me into his arms. Princess, have you laughed enough? Still catching my breath, I teased him. Our esteemed censor is so awe-inspiring, subduing others without even lifting a hand. Jean is thoroughly charmed. His stern face finally softened. He hugged me close, preparing to rest a little. I knew he had rushed back, leaving work unfinished. The exhaustion showed clearly on his face, and my heart ached. Truthfully, I could have simply driven the Lu family out. but because Yan Jingyu valued reason and propriety. I gradually learned to handle matters his way. Yan Jingyu, I said softly, next time if you're too busy, just send word. I'll try to handle it myself. He gazed at me, his eyes calm and full of tenderness.
No, Jean.
I enjoy the liveliness of her home. Yan Jingyu was 7 years older than me, but the years had left no mark on him. On the contrary, he grew even steadier, even more mesmerizing. My heart thumped wildly. Flushing red, I muttered, "How is it that the older you get, the more you know how to make people's hearts race?" He paused, then replied in a low voice, "Princess, you are in the prime of your youth. If I have disappointed you, please allow this subject to make amends." Before I could react, he scooped me into his arms. Startled, I flailed and clung to his neck. I wasn't saying you're old." He glanced at me coolly. "Oh, I wasn't saying you were incapable either." I added frantically, "Princess's golden words are law." He said lightly, "Too late now. The end."